The logbook wasn't supposed to exist. It was sitting under a cracked wooden bench in the ranger station, half buried in dust like it had been waiting there for years, or maybe longer. I remember picking it up because of how heavy it felt. Not physically heavy, but like it had weight in a different way, like the pages were full of something that didn't want to be opened. The cover had no title, just a faded stamp of the forest boundary marker, half eaten by mold. And inside, the first page already had writing. Not printed, handwritten, neat but shaky. I think the forest knows my name. I stopped reading for a second. Outside the station window, the trees weren't moving much. No wind, just stillness. That kind of stillness that feels wrong when you've spent enough time in forests to know they're never truly quiet. I flipped the page. There was a date. 2 months ago. A missing hiker report matched that date exactly. My supervisor had told me about it once, some solo trekker who checked in on the radio, then vanished somewhere past the northern ridge. No body, no gear, nothing. They called it unresolved. We all knew what that meant. The forest just took people sometimes. But I never believed it. Not fully, until I read the second entry. I wrote my name on the tree so I wouldn't forget it, but something kept repeating it back to me from the dark. At first I thought it was wind. Then I realized it was too clear, too close. I felt my fingers tighten on the page, because I knew that part of the forest. The northern ridge wasn't just remote. It was wrong in a way you don't notice until you've been there too long. Trails that don't match maps, echoes that come too late, radios that hiss when they shouldn't. I leaned closer to the logbook. The handwriting got messier in the next entry. I asked it what it wanted. The voice said my name again, exactly the way my mother used to say it when she was angry. I haven't thought about that in years. I don't know how it knows that. My throat went dry. There are things hikers say all the time. Echo tricks, mind fatigue, stress hallucinations. I've heard every explanation, but none of them explain details like that. I turned the page again. The next entry wasn't written like a log anymore. It felt like panic. I stopped responding. That was my mistake. It didn't stop. It got closer every time I ignored it. And now I think it's not just calling me. I think it's learning me. A sound came from outside. Just a branch tapping against the metal roof. I froze anyway, because the timing was too perfect. I waited a few seconds before breathing again, telling myself it was nothing. Wind shifting, animals, normal forest stuff. But my eyes kept going back to the logbook. The next page had a smudge across it, like someone had dragged a dirty hand over the ink. Only one line was clear. It said my full name today. I blinked. That shouldn't have bothered me. But it did, because I noticed something I hadn't before. The missing hiker's name was never written in the logbook. Not once. No signature, no initials, nothing. It was like he stopped writing his identity on purpose, or like something made sure it wasn't there. I turned another page. Empty. Then another. Empty again. For a moment, I thought the entries ended there. But then I saw it. A page tucked deeper inside, almost hidden, like it had been pushed in between others. The ink was darker here. Fresher. I'm still walking. I don't know how long it's been. My watch stopped, but the forest didn't change. It still knows where I am. I hear it even when I close my ears. My stomach tightened, because I knew that feeling. Not personally, but I've had rangers describe it before. The sense that the forest is not just surrounding you, but tracking you, like it's aware of your position even when you try to lose it. I kept reading. There are paths I don't remember entering. I turn around and they are behind me. I think I'm walking in circles, but the trees are not the same. They move slightly, just enough to make me doubt myself. I stopped for a second, because that matched something in my own experience. A few weeks ago, I had gone up near the northern ridge for a routine inspection. I remember walking a trail I had walked 100 times before. But something felt off that day. The trees weren't aligned the same way. I told myself it was lighting, or fatigue. But now, reading this, I wasn't so sure anymore. The logbook trembled slightly in my hands. I forced myself to continue. The next entry was shorter. I stopped calling back, but it keeps calling anyway. It doesn't wait for me anymore. It just speaks. A pause, then another line underneath it, written like it was added later. I think it is inside the trees now. My breath slowed. That sentence didn't feel like fear anymore. It felt like acceptance. Like the writer had crossed a point where panic stops mattering. I looked up at the window again. The forest outside hadn't changed. Still quiet and normal. But now it didn't feel empty. It felt attentive. Like something was standing just beyond what I could see, waiting for me to look long enough to notice it. I flipped forward again. Most pages were blank now. But at the very end of the logbook, there was a final entry. The handwriting was almost calm. Too calm. If you are reading this, then it learned how to leave things behind. My fingers went cold. I didn't want to continue. But I did. Because I couldn't stop. The last line said, "It uses objects to call back to itself." I stared at the words. The station suddenly felt smaller. Not physically, just closer, like the walls had shifted in without moving. Outside, something moved between the trees. Not fast, not dramatic, just a slight break in the pattern of stillness. Like someone walking slowly, careful not to be noticed. I stepped toward the window. Nothing there. Of course, but my reflection in the glass looked a little delayed, just half a second off. I told myself it was lighting again. Always lighting, always explanations. Then I heard it. Not outside. Not from the radio. From behind me. Soft. Clear. My name. I didn't move. Because the voice didn't sound like anyone I knew. But it also didn't sound unfamiliar. It sounded like it had always known how to say it correctly. Exactly the way I would recognize it. The logbook slipped slightly in my hands. And in that moment, I noticed something that made my chest tighten. The page I was holding had changed. New ink had appeared. Right beneath the last entry. Just one line. Fresh. Impossible. It said, "Now you're reading it too." The first thing I noticed on my night shift was that the forest sounded like it was breathing. Slow, low, almost patient. Not wind. Not animals. Something heavier. I was alone in the ranger station for the first time that week. Old building, wooden walls, radio desk buzzing softly like it never fully slept. They told me night shifts were quiet work. That was a lie. Because at 11:43 p.m., the forest spoke my old nickname. Not my official name. Not the one on my badge. The name I buried years ago. Raf. I froze with my hand, halfway to the radio logbook. No one calls me that anymore. Not family, not coworkers, no one. I slowly turned my head toward the window. Nothing outside. Just trees pressed against darkness like black ink stains. I told myself it was fatigue. First night alone, brain tricks. Then it came again. Closer. Raf, you're still awake, right? My throat went dry so fast it hurt. That voice didn't sound like a stranger. It sounded like my childhood friend Imran. But that was impossible. Imran moved to another city years ago. We lost contact. No calls, no messages, nothing. I stood up slowly, chair creaking under me. The radio on the desk crackled once. Just once. Then silence again. I leaned toward it anyway. "Station 7 checking in," I said, forcing my voice steady. "Any units on frequency?" Only static answered. But beneath the static, I heard something else. A whisper inside it. "Raf, don't ignore us." My skin tightened. Because that wasn't just one voice. It was layered. Like multiple people speaking at once, overlapping, breathing through the same sound. I backed away from the radio. My boots hit the wooden floor too loud. Too real. I checked the logbook. Nothing unusual. Routine entries. Weather check, perimeter notes, animal activity. All normal. Too normal. And that was worse. Because the forest outside did not feel normal anymore. It felt like it was waiting for me to do something. Or say something. I sat back down, trying to steady my breathing. Then I heard footsteps outside. Slow. Measuring. Not rushing. I looked toward the window again. Still nothing. But the footsteps didn't stop. They circled the station. One full loop. Then another. Like someone packing around, studying the walls. I grabbed the flashlight. Shined it outside. The beam cut through trees, branches, fog. Empty. No movement. No figure. But the footsteps were still there. Right under the silence. I swallowed hard and whispered, "Who's there?" The moment I said it, the radio clicked. Once. Then a voice came through. Soft. Almost amused. "You still ask that question?" My breath stopped. Because that voice, it was mine. Not recorded. Not distorted. Just me. Saying words I didn't remember speaking. I pulled the radio closer. "Identify yourself," I said, voice shaking now. Static answered first. Then the same voice again. "My name is Raf, isn't it?" I stumbled backward so fast I hit the desk. Chair fell behind me. Wood hit wood. Loud. Real. I tried to think logically. Signal bounce. Old recordings. Someone messing with frequency. But none of it made sense. Because no one here knew that nickname. No one. I shut the radio off. Instant silence. Too fast. Too clean. And that made it worse. The forest outside suddenly felt closer. Like the walls of the station had shrunk inward while I wasn't looking. I paced the room, trying to reset my thoughts. Then I saw something on the window glass. A faint reflection. But it wasn't mine. It was a younger version of me. Same face. Same eyes. But smaller. Like a memory pressed into glass. And behind that reflection, something standing in the trees. Tall. Still. Not moving at all. I blinked hard. It vanished. Of course it did. But my reflection stayed wrong for a second longer than it should have. I stopped packing. I told myself to breathe. To focus. To stay rational. Then the voices returned. Not from outside this time. From inside the station walls. Raf opened the door. I spun around instantly. The door was locked. Chain secure. Nothing there. But the handle moved slightly. Just once. Like something tested it. I stepped back, heart hammering. Then another voice came. This one softer. Closer. Almost gentle. You used to run faster than this. That one hit deeper. Because it was true. Only my old friends would know that. Only they would remember how I used to run home through the forest trail after school, laughing, racing shadows. I pressed my hand against my forehead. "This isn't real," I whispered. But the forest answered immediately. "It is real when you remember it." I stopped breathing for a moment, because that didn't sound like a threat. It sounded like a rule. I looked toward the radio again. Slowly, like it might bite me, I turned it back on. Static filled the room. Then shapes of voices inside it again. Overlapping, breathing, talking like a group, sitting too close together in the dark. And then one clear voice broke through. "Do you remember the tree where you carved your name?" My stomach tightened. There was a tree like that. From childhood. A place we used to meet after school. We carved initials into it once. But I never told anyone where it was exactly. Not even my parents. I whispered, "How do you know that?" The radio answered instantly. "Because you showed it to us." My hands went cold. "No," I said, "that's not possible." A pause. Then the voice softened again. Almost sad. "You always said you'd come back for us." A sudden gust hit the station walls. The lights flickered once, then stabilized. But in that flicker, I saw something outside the window. Not clearly, just a shape, standing closer than before. Too close. I stepped toward the window slowly, every instinct telling me not to. And when I looked out, nothing was there, except footprints in the wet soil. Fresh, leading in a circle around the station. Again, just like before. But this time, one set stopped right at the door. I backed away slowly. Then the radio crackled one last time. And the voice said something that made my chest tighten completely. "Raph, why did you leave us in the forest?" The power went out. Total darkness. And in that darkness, I heard the station door unlatch. The forest shouldn't have been there. That was the first thought in my mind when I saw the trail. Because I knew this area. I had walked it, patrolled it, memorized every bend, every route, every broken signpost. But this path, it wasn't on any map. And worse, it looked like it had always been there. I stood still for a moment, flashlight shaking slightly in my hand. The beam cut through the fog, landing on soil that looked too clean for something hidden. No footprints leading into it. No animal trails crossing it. Just a straight line between trees that didn't belong that close together. I checked my GPS again. Same result. Blank. No path. Just forest. But my eyes were seeing something else entirely. A road where there should have been nothing. I whispered to myself, "This is not possible." And the moment I said it, the forest responded. A soft rustle. Not wind. More like something shifting its weight. I stepped closer. One slow step. Then another. Every instinct in my body told me to turn back, to report it, to leave it alone. But something deeper pulled me forward. Like curiosity mixed with recognition. Like deja vu I couldn't place. The trail looked used. Not fresh. Not new. Old. Worn soil. Slight indentations on the sides like something heavy had walked there many times. I lifted my flashlight higher. The trees on both sides leaned inward slightly. Not naturally. Almost like they were framing it. Like they wanted me to see. My radio crackled once in my pocket. I froze. Then silence again. I didn't even touch it. It just reacted. I exhaled slowly and stepped onto the trail. The moment my boot touched the soil, the sound changed. The forest behind me went quieter, not fully silent, just muted, like I had stepped into a different layer of it. I looked back. The station path I came from was still there, but it felt farther now, slightly distorted, like distance had shifted without me moving. I blinked hard, looked forward again. The trail was still there, waiting, so I walked. Each step felt heavier than the last, not physically, mentally, like the forest was adding weight to my thoughts. After maybe 10 minutes, I noticed something strange. The trees were repeating. Same shape, same broken branch patterns, same twisted bark scars. I stopped, shined the light left, memorized a mark on a trunk, then walked forward again. After a few steps, I saw the same mark again. Exact same position, exact same angle. My stomach tightened. No, I whispered, this is a loop. But it didn't feel like a loop. It felt like the forest was copying itself. Like it didn't want me to notice I was going in circles. I turned around immediately. The trail behind me was gone. Just forest. Dense, tangled, unfamiliar. My breath caught. I spun again. The trail was still ahead. Only forward. No way back. That's when I felt it. A presence. Not behind me. Not beside me. But inside the space around me. Like I had stepped into something aware. My radio crackled again. This time longer. Static stretched into sound. Then a voice came through. Low. Familiar. Raph, don't turn back now. I stopped walking instantly. My heart dropped, because that voice wasn't mine this time. It was Imran again, the same childhood friend from the previous night. I whispered, this is not real, but the radio answered instantly. You used to trust me. A cold wave went through my chest. I turned the radio off completely, took it out of my pocket, and switched it off manually. Silence returned, but the forest didn't stay silent. Now it had something worse. Awareness. I continued forward, slower now. Every step careful. Measured. The air started to feel different. Thicker, like breathing through damp cloth. Then I saw something ahead. A clearing. Small. Perfect circle. No undergrowth. No broken branches. Just open ground surrounded by trees standing too still. I stopped again, because something about it felt wrong in a familiar way. Like I had been there before in a memory I didn't remember living. I stepped closer. The ground inside the clearing was softer, warmer, and there were marks in the soil. Shapes, not random, intentional. Carvings, names. I knelt slowly, shined my light down. My breath stopped completely, because I recognized one of the names. Mine, not my ranger ID, not my official name. My childhood nickname again, the one from last night, carved into the ground like it had always belonged there. I touched it without thinking. The second my fingers brushed the soil, a sound came. Not from outside, from under the ground. A whisper. Finally, I pulled my hand back instantly. Heart hammering. I stood up fast, looked around the clearing. The trees were closer now, slightly leaning inward, like they were watching me from every angle. The whisper came again. Not one voice this time. Multiple. Soft. Layered. Raph. Ref, I stepped backward, slowly, carefully, but the moment I tried to leave the clearing, my feet stopped. Not stuck, just unwilling, like my body forgot how to move backward. My breathing got shallow. I forced myself. One step, then another, and then I saw something at the center of the clearing. A tree, but I swear it wasn't there before. Tall, older than the rest. Its bark darker, almost black, and carved into it were hundreds of names. Some faint, some deep, some fresh. I walked toward it against my will. Each step felt guided, like something was walking me forward from inside my own mind. When I reached it, I saw something hanging from one of its lower branches. A small object, rusty, metal, a ranger badge. Mine, but older, worn, like it had been there for years. I reached for it slowly, and as my fingers touched it, the forest spoke clearly. Not through radio, not through wind, directly inside my head. You came back. My vision blurred for a second, and in that blur I saw something else. The clearing wasn't empty anymore. There were people, not fully visible, just shapes, standing around me, silent, waiting, familiar, friends, names I couldn't place but somehow felt in my chest. I stumbled back. No, I said out loud. No, I'm alone. But the clearing answered immediately. You were never alone here. The tree creaked, slowly, like it was breathing. Then something worse happened. The ground beneath my feet shifted slightly. Not sinking, not breaking, just rearranging, like the forest was adjusting itself around me. I backed away fast this time, finally able to move, finally free. I ran, no direction, just away. Branches scratched my face, roots grabbed at my boots, but I didn't stop. Behind me, I heard the clearing still whispering, not chasing, just calling, patient, calm, certain. Raph, you always come back when we call. I didn't stop running until the trees finally broke into familiar shapes again, until the trail I knew reappeared, until the forest felt like a place again, instead of a memory trying to rewrite itself. I collapsed near a fallen log, breathing hard, hands shaking. The clearing was gone behind me. No sign of it. No break in the forest. Just silence again. Normal silence. The kind that lies. I looked at my hand. Soil was still on my fingers. But something was different now. The name carved in the clearing. It was on my skin too. Faint, like a mark forming slowly under the surface. And as I stared at it, my radio, still turned off in my pocket, clicked once. Even without power. Even without being on. And a voice whispered through it anyway. Closer than before. Now you remember where we are. And somewhere deeper in the forest, something started walking toward me again. The radio was already talking when I reached for it. I hadn't even switched it on. But the static was alive. Not normal static. This one had rhythm, like breathing that forgot it was supposed to be silent. I stood in the ranger station doorway, hand frozen halfway to the desk. And then I heard it. My own voice. Not from memory. From the radio. Don't open it. I stepped back instantly. The door behind me creaked slightly on its own. No wind. No reason. Just movement. My chest tightened, because I knew what door it meant. The storage shed outside. The one I had been avoiding since last night. I swallowed hard and whispered, "Who is this?" The radio answered immediately. Not one voice. Three. Overlapping. Soft. Familiar. Ref. You always ask that. Even when you already know. My fingers went cold. I looked at the radio like it was something dangerous sitting on my desk. It wasn't even plugged in properly. The power cable was half loose. Still, the static grew louder when I stepped closer. I forced myself to touch the switch. Click. The radio turned on. The sound that came out wasn't just static anymore. It was layered memory, like fragments of conversations stuck in a broken loop. And then it changed. A voice spoke clearly. Calm. Too calm. You kept the blue jacket in the shed. I stopped breathing. That wasn't random. That was real. Years ago. A blue jacket I lost during a school trip near the forest edge. I never told anyone where I last saw it. Not even my family. I whispered, "That's not possible." The radio responded instantly. "It is still there." A long pause followed. Then another voice slipped in. Softer, almost like a child. "You promised you would come back for it." My throat tightened, because I did remember that. But I didn't want to. The forest outside suddenly felt closer, like the walls of the station had shifted again. I stepped back slowly. The radio kept talking even when I wasn't near it, as if distance didn't matter anymore. "Why did you stop coming here after that summer?" My mind went cold. I didn't answer, but it kept going anyway. "You were scared after the incident." My heartbeat spiked. I pressed my hand against the desk. "No," I whispered, "that never happened." The radio crackled. Then all voices stopped. A single tone filled the room. Low, heavy, like a warning. Then one voice came through again. Mine, but younger. Shaking. I didn't tell anyone what I saw. My vision blurred for a second, because I remembered something I never allowed myself to think about. A night in the same forest, years ago, before I became a ranger. A night I buried so deep it stopped feeling real. I stepped away from the desk. Slow, careful. The radio spoke again. "This is why you came back." I froze. My hand trembled slightly. "No," I said, "I came here for work." The radio answered instantly. "You came because it called you." Silence hit the room again, but not empty silence. Waiting silence. I turned toward the window. Outside, the forest looked normal. Too normal. That was the problem now, because nothing here ever felt normal anymore. I exhaled slowly and walked toward the radio again. I needed control, needed logic. I grabbed a notebook from the desk and wrote down the frequency. Maybe interference. Maybe old signals bouncing through terrain. Maybe anything scientific. But the moment I wrote the numbers, the radio spoke again. "Don't pretend you don't recognize that frequency." My pen stopped moving. Slowly, I looked at the radio. "How do you know that?" I asked. A pause. Then, "Because you used it first." My stomach dropped. Another memory flickered. Faint, unstable. A handheld radio. Years ago. Me standing near the edge of the forest, calling someone who never answered back. I pressed my palm to my forehead. "No," I whispered again. "I never worked here before this job." The radio answered softly. "You did." The word hit differently, not as a statement, as a correction, like I was wrong about something obvious. I stepped back again. The radio clicked on its own. Frequency changed without me touching it. And suddenly, another voice came through. Panicked, breathing fast. Raph, why did you leave us there? My entire body went cold. Because that voice wasn't random. It sounded like Imran again. But older now. Strained. Almost breaking. I grabbed the radio. Stop, I said sharply. Stop this. But it didn't stop. Instead, it changed. The static sharpened. And then I heard something that made my chest tighten completely. Background sounds. Wind. Trees. Footsteps. Like a recording playing from somewhere inside the forest itself. Then Imran's voice again. Closer. Why did you stop responding that night? My memory fractured. Something pressed against the edges of my thoughts. A night I couldn't place fully. But my body remembered the fear, even if my mind refused to. I stepped back so fast I hit the wall. The radio spoke again. Calm, almost gentle. You tried to forget it. I shook my head. I don't know what you're talking about. The radio responded immediately. You were never alone in the forest. A long silence followed. Then the sound shifted again. Now it wasn't voices. It was laughter. Faint, childlike, distant, then closer. Too close. I turned the radio off violently. Total silence. For 3 seconds. Then, it turned itself back on. I stepped away from it completely now. Heart hammering. No power, I whispered. It's not plugged in properly. The radio answered anyway. You think power matters here? I looked at the cable. It was still hanging loose. Not connected. But the radio was on. Fully alive. Breathing static. I backed toward the door. Slowly. Careful not to make noise. But the radio noticed. Of course it did. You're going outside. I stopped. The voice wasn't a question. It was observation. I didn't answer. The radio continued. Don't go to the shed. My stomach tightened instantly. That shed again. I whispered why. A pause. Then softer. Because it remembers you better than you remember it. A chill went through me. The lights flickered once. I turned quickly toward the window. The forest outside looked darker now. Closer. Like it had moved without me noticing. The radio spoke again. You can still leave if you don't open it. I froze. That was new. A choice. Something like hope. I hesitated. Open what? I asked. Silence. Then, a final voice layered under everything else. Not mine. Not Imran. Not any I recognized fully. Just something familiar in a way that hurt. The door you locked that night. My breath stopped completely. Because I didn't remember locking any door. But my body did. I reached for the door handle of the station without thinking. Stopped halfway. My hands shaking. The radio spoke one last time. Soft. Almost like a warning now. You're closer than you think. And then behind me. Something inside the station storage room door clicked. Like it remembered my name too. And waited for me to open it. The road was gone. Not blocked. Not damaged. Just not leading anywhere anymore. I stared at it for a full minute, engine still running. headlights cutting into fog that felt too thick for this time of night. I had driven this route hundreds of times. Hundreds. But now it ended in trees. Not a broken trail. Not an off-road path. Just forest where a road should have been. I whispered, "This isn't possible." My voice sounded small inside the car, almost like it didn't belong to me. I checked the GPS again. Same result. No signal. No reroute. Just a blinking dot sitting in the middle of nowhere like I had stopped existing properly. I reversed slowly, turned the wheel, went back the way I came. But the moment I drove for 10 minutes, the trees changed. Same shape, same broken branches, same leaning trunks, like I had seen them before. My stomach tightened. "No," I said under my breath. "I already passed this." I slowed the car, looked closer. There was a fallen log on the right side of the road, split in half. I remembered it, because I had seen it 10 minutes ago. Exactly the same angle, exactly the same position. I stopped the car, engine idling. My breathing got louder inside the silence. I checked the rearview mirror. The road behind me looked normal. But when I turned forward again, it wasn't the same road. It was slightly different, like the forest had rewritten it while I wasn't looking. I felt something cold move through my chest. I turned the car again, this time faster. Left turn onto what should have been the exit route. But the road curved too soon, too naturally, and within minutes, I was back at the same fallen log. Again, same place, same silence, same impossible loop. I turned off the engine. Everything went quiet instantly. Too quiet. No insects. No wind. Not even distant birds. Just stillness that felt like it was listening. I stepped out of the car slowly. The ground under my boots felt softer than it should have, like it wasn't fully solid anymore. I walked to the road's edge, looked into the trees. Nothing moved, but I knew something was wrong, because the forest didn't feel like it was around me anymore. It felt like it was aware of me, like it had noticed I was trying to leave. My radio crackled inside the car, even though it was off. I froze, then slowly walked back inside. Picked it up. It wasn't on. No lights, no power, but the static was there again. Soft, breathing. Then a voice came through. Calm, familiar. "You're going the wrong way." My hands tightened instantly. I whispered, "Stop doing this." The radio didn't respond to that. Instead, it said something worse. "You already tried this road before." My throat went dry. Because it was right. I had turned left, then right, then back. And every time, I ended up here again. I stepped out of the car again. This time slower, more careful, like movement itself might trigger something. I looked down the road. It stretched forward for maybe 50 meters, then disappeared into fog. I walked. Each step felt heavier than the last. Not physically, mentally, like I was pushing through something that didn't want me moving forward. The radio in my hand whispered again. "You always stop here." I stopped walking instantly. My heart jumped. I looked at the road ahead. It was the same place I had stopped the first time. The fallen log was behind me now. I turned slowly. It was gone. No log. No mark. Just empty road. I whispered, "Where is it?" The radio answered immediately. You only see what we allow. My breath hitched. The word we hit differently. Not singular. Not random interference. Something collective. I turned back toward the car. It looked slightly off. The angle was wrong. The headlights were dimmer. Like the car was becoming less real the longer I stayed outside it. I walked back quickly. Inside again. Locked the door. My hands were shaking now. I pressed my forehead against the steering wheel. "This is not real," I said. "This is not real." But the radio answered softly. "It is real enough to keep you here." I looked up instantly. The fog outside thickened. Not slowly. Instantly. Like someone had poured it into the world. The road disappeared completely now. Even the trees blurred. Everything turned white-gray. No direction. No edges. Just nothing. I started the engine again. Nothing changed. I reversed. Same. Drove forward. Same. The road didn't exist anymore. Only space that looped itself. My breathing got faster. I checked the dashboard. Fuel was dropping faster than normal. Too fast. Like the car was running without moving. I turned off the engine again. Silence returned. And in that silence, the radio spoke again. "This is the part where you remember." I slammed my hand on it. "Stop saying that." But the voice didn't stop. Instead it softened. Almost gentle. "You came here before you became a ranger." My body went cold. A memory flickered. Faint. Unstable. A younger version of me standing near the forest edge. Not in uniform. Not in control. Just waiting. I shook my head hard. "No," I whispered, "that's not mine." The radio responded immediately. "It is all yours." A long pause. Then, "You just split it." My hands tightened on the steering wheel again. The fog outside shifted. And for a split second, I saw something standing between the trees. Not fully visible. Just a shape. Still. Watching. Then gone. I opened the car door again. Stepped out. This time I didn't walk forward. I just stood there. Waiting. Listening. And then I heard it. Not from the radio. Not from the car. From everywhere. My name. Zoft. Multiple voices. Layered. Like the forest itself had learned how to say it together. Raf. 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 I turned in circles. Nothing there. But the fog moved slightly each time I turned. Like it was reacting to me. I spoke out loud, "What do you want from me?" The forest answered without hesitation. "Return what you took." My stomach dropped. "I didn't take anything," I said. The voices paused, then replied as one. "You took yourself out." The words hit too hard. My vision blurred slightly. Another memory tried to surface. I fought it, but the radio spoke again, quieter now. "You locked the part of you that stayed with us." I stepped backward. Slow. Careful. The fog thickened behind me. The car behind me was gone now. Not moved. Not hidden. Just not there. I spun instantly. Nothing. Only forest. No road. No car. No exit. I whispered, "Where is my car?" The answer came from the trees. "You don't need it to stay." My breathing became uneven. I looked down at my hands. The soil from earlier chapters was still there. But now it was darker. like ink spreading under skin. And for the first time, I noticed something else. A faint sound inside the forest. Not calling me anymore. Not asking. Just waiting. Like it knew I had stopped running. The radio gave one final whisper. You can still leave, if you remember how you arrived. Silent. Heavy. Complete. And somewhere deep in the fog, something turned slightly toward me again, as if it had been waiting for this exact moment all along. The camp wasn't supposed to be this quiet. Even before we stepped out of the van, I felt it. No birds. No wind through the trees. No distant animal sounds. Just a silence that felt organized. Like someone had turned the forest down on purpose. I remember standing there with my bag still in hand, staring at the old wooden sign. Camp Whisper Pines. The paint was cracked, faded green letters, half of the board hanging loose like it gave up years ago. Behind it, the forest didn't move. It just watched. I told myself it was just an abandoned place reopening after 20 years. That's what the email said. New management, new start, new counselors. But nothing about this place felt new. The van door slammed behind me. The sound echoed too long. That was the first thing that felt wrong. Echoes shouldn't survive in open air like that. All right, everyone out, our coordinator said. Her voice sounded too normal for this place, like she didn't notice the way the trees leaned slightly inward around the camp gate. We all walked forward. 6 counselors total. New hires. Different cities. Different lives. But something about the way we all went quiet at the same time made it feel like we already knew we shouldn't be here. The wooden fence around the camp was still standing. Barely. One side had collapsed inward, like it had tried to leave but fell halfway through. I ran my fingers over the gate as I passed. The wood felt warm. That was the second thing that didn't make sense. Wood shouldn't be warm in the shade of a forest this deep. Inside the camp, everything was still there. Cabins lined up in a half circle. Old playground rusted but intact. A mess hall with broken windows like empty eyes. And at the center, the campfire ring. Stone circle. Black ash still inside it. Fresh ash. I stopped walking without realizing it. One of the others noticed. Is that used? She asked quietly. No one answered her. Because it shouldn't have been. This place was closed for 20 years. No maintenance, no staff, no visitors. But the ash looked like it was from yesterday. The coordinator clapped her hands. Okay, let's not overthink it. We do inspection, then we settle in. Her voice was steady. Too steady. Like she was forcing it to stay normal. We split up slowly. I was assigned cabin 3. The walk there felt longer than it should have been. Every step made the ground feel slightly softer. Like the forest was absorbing sound instead of letting it bounce back. Halfway down the path, I stopped. Because I realized something strange. I couldn't hear the others anymore. Not footsteps. Not talking. Nothing. I turned back. The group was still there. But their voices were muted. Like I was underwater. I called out. Hey, do you guys hear? My voice didn't travel. It just disappeared halfway through the air. One of the counselors looked at me, but didn't react, like she didn't hear anything at all. I tried again. Same result. No sound reached them. I stood there frozen for a second, then walked faster toward cabin 3. The trees felt closer now. Not physically moving, just visually tighter, like the space between them was shrinking. Cabin 3 was at the edge of the camp, almost touching the forest line. It looked worse than the others. Door slightly open. Window cracked. A wooden porch that tilted downward like it was tired of holding weight. I stepped inside. The air changed immediately. Cooler, drier, but also older. Like the air itself had been sitting there for years. Dust floated in the beam of my flashlight. And for a moment, I thought I saw footprints inside. Not fresh. Not old either. Somewhere in between. Like they were trying to decide when they existed. I moved slowly across the room. Bunk beds lined both sides. Mattresses still there. Blankets folded neatly. Too neatly. Like someone had prepared the room and then never left. Then I heard it. A soft sound outside. Footsteps. I froze. Looked toward the door. Nothing visible. But the steps continued. Slow. Measured. Walking around the cabin. I whispered hello. No answer. Just footsteps continuing in a full circle. Like someone was studying the building from the outside. I moved closer to the door. Careful. Slow. The moment my hand touched the handle, the footsteps stopped. Silence returned instantly. Too instantly. I opened the door. Nothing there. Just trees. Still. Watching. I stepped outside. Looked around. No one. But the ground near the cabin had marks now. Fresh impressions in the dirt. Circular pattern. Like packing. I swallowed hard. This is just an old place, I whispered to myself. Old places make sounds. But even as I said it, I didn't believe it. Because old places don't move like this. I walked back inside quickly. Locked the door. And that's when I noticed something on the wall. Scratches. Not random. Lines carved into the wood. Repeated. Same shape over and over. At first, I thought it was damage. Then I realized it was writing. Letters, but not English words. Something almost like names. Or attempts at names. My flashlight flickered. Once, twice, then steadied. And in that flicker, I saw something worse. The bunk bed behind me was no longer empty. For half a second, I saw someone sitting there. Just a shape. Head slightly tilted. Watching me. Then gone. I spun instantly. Nothing there. Of course. But my breathing had already changed. Faster now. Shallow. I backed toward the door. Then stopped. Because I heard it again. Outside. But not footsteps this time. Whispering. Low. Not words exactly. More like voices trying to remember how speech works. I pressed my ear to the wall. The whispering got clearer. And then I heard something that made my chest tight. My name. But not said correctly. Like it had been learned from hearing it wrong too many times. I stepped back fast. This isn't real, I said out loud. But the cabin answered me. Not with words. With a creak. Like the wood itself shifted slightly. I opened the door and ran out. The camp was still there. But now it felt different. Too still. Even the other counselors were gone from view. No movement between cabins. No voices. Just empty space where people had been minutes ago. I called out. Nothing responded. I walked faster toward the center of camp. Hello, I shouted again. Still nothing. Then I saw it. The campfire ring. But now the ash inside it was disturbed. Like something had just been sitting there. Fresh heat rising from it. I stepped closer. and saw footprints inside the ash. Small, human, leading from the fire into the forest. I froze, because there were no tracks coming in, only going out. The forest behind the camp looked darker now, deeper, like it had opened slightly to receive something. And as I stared at those footprints, I realized something worse. There were 6 sets, one for each of us, and they were already halfway gone into the trees. I stepped back slowly, heart hammering now, trying to think logically. Maybe prank, maybe staff staging, maybe anything normal. But the forest answered that thought immediately. A whisper came from behind me. Soft, close, you're late. I turned fast. Nothing there, but the wind shifted for the first time since arrival. Just slightly, like the forest had leaned closer, waiting for me to understand something I wasn't ready to know. And deep inside the trees, something answered back to that whisper, as if it had been listening the whole time. It started with silence that wasn't empty anymore. It was waiting. I remember lying inside my tent, staring at the thin fabric ceiling, listening to nothing at all. No crickets, no wind. Even the campfire had burned down too fast, like it was tired of staying lit. Then I heard it. Soft, right outside. My full name. Not shouted, not called, just spoken like a secret being returned. RM. I froze. My breath stopped before my thoughts could even catch up. Because that voice didn't belong here. It sounded like my older cousin, the one who used to call me that name back home. Not my counselor name, not the name on the camp roster, the name only family used. I didn't move, not even my fingers. The tent felt smaller instantly, like the air had tightened around me. Then the voice came again, closer this time. RM, are you awake? My throat went dry. I wanted to answer, but something inside me said no, because answering meant it was real, and I wasn't ready for that. A rustle moved across the tent wall, slow, measured, like someone dragging their hand gently along the fabric. I turned my head slightly, just enough to see the outline of the shape outside. Not fully human-shaped, but close enough to make my stomach twist. I whispered, "Who's there?" Silence answered first. Then, a second voice joined, from the other side of the tent. Myra. That wasn't my name. That was one of the other counselors. I recognized it instantly. She was in the tent next to mine. I heard her earlier laughing near the fire, but now her name was being used in a voice that sounded like her mother. Soft, careful, almost loving. Mira, come out. I heard her tent zipper move, just slightly, then stop. Then her voice, confused, afraid. Mom. That single word changed everything, because now it wasn't just me hearing things. It was all of us. I pushed myself up slowly inside my sleeping bag, heart pounding now. Every sound outside felt sharper. The forest itself felt closer, like it had moved in while we were sleeping. Then I heard footsteps, between the tents, not running, walking, calm, patient, like whoever it was knew we couldn't escape anyway. A third voice called out. Samir, another counselor, male, younger. His tent was near the fire pit. I heard him shift, fabric moving. Then his whisper. Who is that? No answer, only silence. Then the voice again. But different now. Not soft anymore. More certain. Samir, you said you would come back. A pause. Then, the sound of his zipper opening. I don't know why he did it. Maybe curiosity. Maybe recognition. Maybe fear disguised as trust. But he stepped out. I heard it clearly. Feet on dirt. One step. Then another. Then silence again. I whispered, "No, don't go." But my voice didn't leave the tent. It felt trapped inside my throat. Then something worse happened. From another tent, someone else spoke. "RM, don't look." I froze completely, because that wasn't my cousin's voice this time. It was mine, but older, tired, warned. I pressed my hand over my mouth, heart hammering so loud I thought the forest could hear it. The voice outside my tent continued. Soft again, patient again. "You always look anyway." A tear of fabric sound came from somewhere nearby. Not mine. Not yet. But close. Too close. I crawled forward slowly, pulled the tent flap just slightly open. The camp was dim under moonlight. Empty fire pit in the center. Tents all around. Some zipped, some slightly open. And between them, movement. Not fast, not aggressive, just slow walking shapes, moving from tent to tent, stopping, listening, speaking, calling names. Each voice matched someone different, perfectly, like it already knew what we loved hearing. My chest tightened. I saw Myra's tent. Her silhouette inside was shaking. Then the voice outside her tent spoke again. "Your mother is here." Her breathing changed instantly. Then I heard her zipper open. No hesitation this time. I whispered, "No, no, no, no." But she was already stepping out. One by one, others followed. Samir, two more counselors I barely knew, all moving like they were pulled by something familiar. Something safe, something wrong. And each time they stepped out, the forest got quieter, like it was collecting something from them. I stayed inside my tent, still, frozen, trying to understand what was happening. Then the voice outside mine returned. Different now, closer, almost right at the entrance. "RM." I shut my eyes. "No," I whispered, "I'm not going." Silence. Then a shift, like something crouched outside. And then, my father's voice. "Beta, it's time." My entire body went cold. That shouldn't be possible. Not here. Not in this place. Not ever. I opened my eyes instantly. And outside the tent, I saw a shadow standing still. Not moving. Just waiting. The outline felt familiar. Painfully familiar. My chest tightened so hard it hurt. The voice came again. Soft. Real. "I came to take you home." My fingers trembled on the tent fabric. For a moment, I believed it. Not logically. Emotionally. That was the danger. Because it sounded exactly like home. Then something shifted behind it. The shadow stretched slightly. Too long. Too wrong. And I saw something inside it that broke the illusion. No face. Just shape repeating itself. Like it was copying memory, not reality. I pulled back instantly. Heart racing. "No," I said out loud this time. "You're not him." The voice paused, then softened, almost disappointed. "You remember now." The forest around the camp shifted slightly. Not physically loud, just a pressure change, like reality had inhaled. And then I heard it. From every direction, from every tent that was now empty. All the voices together, calling my name. Not one at a time anymore. All at once. RM, RM, RM. I covered my ears. But it didn't matter. It wasn't sound anymore. It was inside my head. I looked outside again. The campfire pit was glowing faintly now, even though no one had lit it. And the ash inside it was moving, slowly forming shapes, letters, names, and one of them was mine. My breath broke. I stepped back inside the tent completely, zipped it halfway, hands shaking uncontrollably now, trying to think, trying to understand. Then my walkie-talkie crackled on its own, even though I never touched it. A voice came through. Calm, familiar, too familiar. This is why we brought you back. I whispered, who is this? A pause. Then the answer came. Not from outside, not from inside, but everywhere at once. You already know. And outside my tent, the zipper slowly began to move on its own. The cabin was already unlocked when I got there, but I swear it wasn't before. I stood in front of it for a full moment, breathing shallow, watching the door slowly swing inward by itself. No wind, no pressure, just movement, like it wanted to be open. The others were still gone. Or maybe I was the only one still trying to pretend they were. I don't even know anymore. The camp felt emptier now, not physically, but like something had been removed from it layer by layer. Sound was thinner. Light felt weaker. Even my footsteps didn't feel like mine anymore. I stepped inside the cabin. The air changed immediately. Not cold, not warm, just old. Like the room had been holding its breath for years and finally forgot how to exhale. Dust hung in the flashlight beam. But there was something else. Order. Too much order. Beds aligned perfectly. Blankets folded in exact corners. Even the wooden chairs were placed in straight, unnatural lines. Nobody leaves a cabin like this. Not after abandonment. Not after 20 years. I whispered someone was here. My voice sounded wrong inside the room. Too loud. Too alive. I walked deeper. The floor creaked under me, slow and tired. Then I saw it. A desk pushed against the far wall, and on it a thick book. Not a journal, not a logbook. Something heavier, covered in dust but not untouched dust. Disturbed dust, like someone had opened it recently, then carefully closed it again. My hand hesitated before touching it. I don't know why. Something about it felt like touching a thought that didn't belong to me. But I opened it anyway. The first page was blank. Second page too. Then suddenly, ink. Sharp, dark, fresh. Like it had just been written seconds ago. I leaned closer. The words were simple, but they made my stomach drop instantly. Rulebook of Camp Whisper PINES. My breath slowed. That name again. Whisper Pines. It felt heavier every time I heard it. Like the forest was saying it differently each time. I turned the page. My fingers were shaking now. Second page. A list. Handwritten rules. Not printed. Not formal. Written like a warning from someone who didn't expect to be believed. Rule 1. Do not respond when the forest calls your name. I stopped breathing. Read it again. Slower this time. Same words. Same meaning. But it felt like it changed slightly each time I looked at it. I whispered, "Calls your name," and instantly regretted it. Because the cabin responded. Not with sound, but with silence shifting. Like something outside had noticed I spoke. I forced myself to continue reading. Rule 2. If you hear a familiar voice outside your tent, it is not familiar. My throat tightened. That matched last night. The counselors, the names, the voices. I flipped the page faster now. Rule 3. Do not step outside if the voice sounds like someone you trust. My chest tightened harder because I remembered Myra. I remembered Samir. I remembered how easily they walked out. Like trust was enough to survive this place. It was. The ink on the page looked slightly smudged, like it had been rewritten over old text. I leaned closer and noticed something worse. Some words underneath the rule were still visible, scratched out, barely readable. But there, it learns trust first. I froze. My hand stopped moving completely. The room felt smaller suddenly, like the walls had shifted in slightly. I turned my flashlight around the cabin fast. Nothing, just chairs, beds, still order, too much order. I forced myself to keep reading. Rule 4. Never correct the voice when it gets your name wrong. My stomach twisted, because that meant something important. The forest didn't know us perfectly. It learned, and mistakes were dangerous. I thought about the voices outside the tents, the way they said names slightly wrong. Like practice, like repetition, like learning. My breath hitched. I turned another page quickly. Rule 5. If the forest speaks through someone you know, do not answer. That version is already gone. My hand went cold. Gone. Not dead. Gone. That word felt worse somehow. Like something had been removed from existence, but still allowed to move. A sound creaked behind me. I turned instantly. Nothing there. But the chair in the corner had shifted slightly. Just a few centimeters. Facing me now. It wasn't before. I swear it was. I stepped back. The rulebook slipped slightly in my hand. And then, a new line appeared on the page. Right under Rule 5. Ink still forming. I watched it happen. Slow. Unnatural. It wrote itself. If you are reading this inside the cabin, you are already responding. My breath stopped completely. No, I whispered. No, I didn't respond. But even as I said it, I realized something. I had been reacting to every rule, every word, every instruction. Like the book wasn't just informing me. It was training me, conditioning me. The cabin creaked again. Longer this time, like it was stretching. I stepped backward toward the door. Slow, careful, but the moment I reached the doorway, I saw it. Outside, between the trees, a shape, standing perfectly still. Not moving, not blinking, just waiting. I couldn't see details, but I knew it was watching the cabin. Not me. The cabin, like it belonged to it. The rulebook in my hand flipped by itself. One page, then another. Faster now, like something wanted me to see the end. I tried to stop it, but my fingers wouldn't obey properly. The pages stopped. Final rule. Rule 6. When the rule book shows you the last rule, the forest has already decided your role. I stepped back instantly, heart hammering now. "What role?" I whispered. The cabin answered, this time not with silence, but with sound. A soft voice, right behind me. "Familiar. Too familiar. Reader." I turned so fast I almost fell. Nothing there. But the rule book was warm now. Not physically warm. Alive warm. Like something had just finished speaking through it. The door behind me creaked again. Wider this time. The forest outside felt closer. Not moving. Just aware. And then I noticed something on the last page. A final line I hadn't seen before. Fresh ink. Still wet. It said, "Now close the book properly." My hands froze, because I hadn't opened it myself anymore. And behind me, something stepped into the cabin without making a sound. He didn't scream when he went into the forest. That's the part I can't stop thinking about. No panic, no running. Just silence, and then his flashlight moving slowly between the trees like he was still walking calmly. Like he trusted what he was hearing. We all heard it. His name. Soft. Perfect. Right outside the camp boundary. Samir. At first, we thought it was one of us messing around, trying to scare him. But the voice didn't come from the camp. It came from deep inside the trees. And it sounded exactly like his older sister. I saw his body react instantly, like something inside him had been pulled. He turned toward the forest without thinking. I remember shouting, "Samir, stop." But my voice didn't reach him. It felt like the air between us had thickened, like the forest was canceling sound that didn't belong to it. He took one step, then another, not running, just walking, like he already knew where he was going. I moved after him. So did Myra. But the moment we crossed the first line of trees, the camp behind us felt farther away. Not physically, mentally, like distance had changed rules. The flashlight in Samir's hand was the only real thing moving in all that dark. A small white beam cutting through black branches. And it never shook. That's what scared me most. If he was afraid, the light would have moved. But it didn't. It stayed steady, like his hands had stopped reacting to fear. I whispered, "Samir, talk to me." No answer. Only the forest answered instead. "Don't worry." That voice again. His sister's voice. Soft. Close. Come a little deeper. My stomach tightened instantly, because it wasn't just imitation anymore. It was confidence, like it knew exactly how to sound safe. Samir stopped walking, just for a second. Then his head tilted slightly, like he was listening. And then he smiled. That smile broke something in me, because it wasn't fear. It wasn't confusion. It was recognition, like he had finally found something he was searching for. I grabbed his arm. "Hey," I said louder this time, "that's not real." My fingers touched him, and he felt cold. Not normal cold. Forest cold. Like his skin had already started belonging to the air around us. He didn't pull away. He just whispered something under his breath. I couldn't hear it fully, but I caught one word. Finally, Myra stepped closer behind me. Her voice was shaking. "Samir, please." That's when the forest answered again. But not to us. To him. "Samir, you're almost home." And then he let go of my hand. Slowly, gently, like I was the one holding him back from something important. He turned and walked deeper. Myra grabbed my sleeve instantly. "Don't let him go," she said. But I already knew something worse. We weren't letting him go. We were watching him leave. Because every step he took now felt guided. Like the forest was walking him from inside his thoughts. We followed. Not because we wanted to. Because stopping felt impossible. The trees became tighter. Closer. The light from his flashlight was the only reason we didn't lose him completely. But even that started changing. The beam began to flicker. Not broken. Controlled. Like something was squeezing it. Samir stopped again. Right in a clearing that wasn't there a minute ago. I swear it was. The ground was flat. Too flat. No roots. No leaves. Just bare soil like it had been prepared. Myra whispered, "This wasn't here." I nodded slowly. Because it felt staged. Like the forest had placed it there for this exact moment. Samir lifted his flashlight slightly and pointed it forward. That's when I saw it. Something hanging between the trees. Not fully visible. Just shape. Human shape. But not moving like a human should. It swayed slightly. Not from wind. From intention. Samir took a step forward. I shouted no. But my voice broke halfway. Because the air here wasn't letting me speak properly anymore. The thing in the trees spoke again. "Samir." Closer now. Clearer. Like it had moved directly behind what it was imitating. Samir nodded. Just once. Then whispered, "I'm coming." My blood went cold. "Samir, no." I ran forward. Grabbed his shoulder. Pulled him back. And for the first time, he reacted. He turned toward me. Slowly. And his eyes looked wrong. Not empty. Not possessed. Just somewhere else. Like part of him was already gone ahead of us. He said softly, "She's been calling me for a long time." Myra froze behind me. "Who?" she asked. Samir didn't answer her. Instead, the forest did. His sister's voice again. But now it was everywhere. Not just one direction. Every direction. "Samir, don't fight it." He shook my hand off gently. Not violently. Like I was just unnecessary weight now. He took one step forward. Then stopped again. And this time, he turned back to me. Very slowly. And smiled again. But this smile was different. Calm. Certain. Like something had already finished explaining everything to him. "I remember now," he said. My chest tightened. "What do you remember?" I asked. He looked past me. Into the trees. "I remember why I came back." Myra stepped forward. "Samir, we came here for camp training. That's it." He shook his head slightly. Like she was mistaken about something small. "Not this time," he said. Then he pointed his flashlight into the forest. And for a split second, I saw something move in the beam. Not a person. Not an animal. Just shape. Standing behind the trees. Waiting. Samir stepped toward it. I grabbed him again. Harder this time. "Stop," I said. And then the forest did something I'll never forget. It answered me. Directly. Not through him. Not through distance. Inside my head. "You're not supposed to keep him." My entire body went cold. Myra stepped back instantly. Samir turned his head slightly toward me and whispered something that didn't sound like him anymore. "It's okay, I won't be lost." And then he walked into the trees. Not running, not stumbling, just gone. The flashlight moved deeper, steady, unshaking, until it stopped, right in one spot, then slowly tilted downward, like it had been placed on the ground. And then, silence, complete. Myra ran forward. "Samir," she screamed. But the forest didn't respond. It only listened. We reached the spot where the light had stopped, and found it. His flashlight, still on, pointing forward, deeper into the forest. But Samir was gone. No footprints leaving. No struggle. No sound. Just absence. Myra dropped to her knees instantly. No, 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 no. I stood there frozen, because I noticed something worse. The flashlight beam wasn't random. It was pointing in a straight line, like it was marking a direction. A path, not where he went, but where he was meant to continue. Myra whispered, "We have to find him." I wanted to agree, but my voice didn't come out right, because deep inside the trees, something answered again. Soft, patient, almost satisfied. And it wasn't using his name anymore. It was waiting for the next one. It didn't start with voices this time. It started with agreement, like the forest had finally decided to stop pretending it was quiet. We were all standing near the empty clearing where Samir disappeared. Nobody spoke at first. Even Myra wasn't crying anymore. She just stared at his flashlight still lying in the dirt, pointing forward like a warning that never ended. Then someone whispered, "Did you hear that?" And that's when it happened. Not one voice, not one direction. Everything at once. Our names, all of them, inside the trees, inside the air, inside our thoughts. RM, Myra, Rohan, even names I hadn't heard before, but somehow recognized as belonging to the others. We all froze, because it wasn't just calling anymore. It was remembering. The forest wasn't guessing our names. It was reading them. I looked at Myra. Her face had gone pale. "You hear that too?" she whispered. I nodded slowly, but I couldn't speak, because something worse was happening. The voices weren't just calling us. They were responding to us, like they could hear what we were thinking. My mind flashed back without permission. A memory I never told anyone. Me at age 10, hiding behind my house after breaking my father's watch. The feeling of guilt so sharp, I thought it would cut my chest open. And then, the forest spoke it out loud. "Arham, you hid it under the red pillow." My breath stopped. My entire body went cold. "No," I whispered. "That's not possible." But the voice didn't stop. It didn't even hesitate. "You cried after. You said you didn't mean it." My knees weakened instantly. I stepped back, because nobody knew that memory. Not my friends, not my family, not anyone. Myra turned toward me suddenly, her voice shaking. It's saying things about me too. I saw it in her face before she spoke. She was already breaking. And then she whispered, "It's talking about my brother." Her eyes filled instantly. I never told anyone about him. The forest answered immediately. Soft, certain. He didn't leave because he wanted to. Myra gasped. Her hand went to her mouth, and I saw something in her expression collapse. Like a truth she had buried too deep had been pulled into daylight. Around us, the others were reacting too. Some backing away, some falling to their knees. One counselor started whispering, "Stop, stop," over and over again. But the forest didn't stop. It expanded. Not physically, mentally, like it was opening layers of us we didn't know existed. A voice came from behind me. A boy I barely knew. "You told your friend you didn't care," the forest said through him. He shook his head violently. "I didn't say that." But the forest replied instantly. "You meant it." Silence hit harder after that. Because that wasn't a memory. That was truth. We all felt it. The shift. The realization that this thing wasn't just replaying us. It was correcting us. Rewriting us into something it already understood. The air grew heavier. Not dark. Not cold. Just full. Like the forest had filled every empty space inside us. Then Myra whispered something that changed everything. "It's not just talking," she said. "It's learning from us." I looked at her. "What do you mean?" She swallowed hard. It didn't know that before. It only knew now because we remembered it. That sentence hit something deep inside me. Because she was right. Every memory it spoke, we reacted to first. And now it had access. Not through magic. Through us. The forest didn't steal secrets. It extracted confirmation. A new voice came. Calm. Close. Too close. From the trees right in front of us. RM. I stepped back instantly. Because that voice. It wasn't just my cousin anymore. It was layered. Like multiple versions of him speaking through one mouth. "You remember now," it said. My throat tightened. "No," I whispered. "Stop using that voice." A pause. Then, "Myra." She froze. Her head snapped up. But she didn't speak. Because whatever it said next, only she could hear. I saw her expression change instantly. Confusion. Then fear. Then something worse. Recognition. She stepped back slowly. "No," she whispered. "That didn't happen like that." But the forest replied gently. "It did, you just didn't want to keep it." Her legs almost gave out. I grabbed her arm. "What is it saying?" I asked. She shook her head fast. "I can't say it." That was worse. Because silence meant acceptance. And then, all around us again. Every direction. Every voice. At once. Not calling. Revealing. It spoke of us like we were open books. Moments we forgot. Moments we buried. Moments we lied about even inside our own minds. A counselor near the fire pit started crying. "No more, please, no more." But the forest didn't care. It wasn't angry. It wasn't cruel. It was complete. Then something shifted. The voices stopped. Instantly. Like someone had cut a wire. We all froze. The silence returned. But it wasn't the same silence anymore. It was heavier. Thicker. Like it was listening back now. Myra whispered, "Why did it stop?" I didn't answer. Because I noticed something in the distance. The trees weren't moving. But they felt aligned. Like everything was facing the same direction now. Waiting. Then a new sound came. Not a voice. A breath. Collective. Deep. From the entire forest at once. We all stepped backward instinctively. And then, one final voice spoke. Not through memory. Not through imitation. Directly. "You are known now." My heart slammed in my chest. And I understood something I didn't want to understand. It wasn't talking to scare us. It was finishing recognition. like a system completing input. Myra whispered, "What does that mean?" But I already knew, because the flashlight from earlier flickered behind us, still pointing forward, still marking direction, Samir's path. And now it felt like it wasn't empty anymore, like something had stepped into it fully. The forest didn't speak again. It didn't need to, because silence itself now felt like agreement, like everything had been said already. We stood there, surrounded by trees that now felt aware, not watching, remembering. And in that silence, I realized something worse. The forest wasn't calling us anymore. It was waiting for what we would do next. The map changed while we were standing on it. That's the first thing I tell people now. Not that anyone believes me, but I watched contour lines move under my own hand like veins twisting beneath skin. And the worst part was, nobody reacted right away. Like our brains refused to understand what our eyes were seeing. We were 3 hours into the forest when it started. No trails, no cabins, no signs of people. Just miles of untouched land the satellite scans couldn't explain. I was part of a geological survey team, hired to update missing terrain records near Black Hollow Forest. At least that's what the paperwork said. But even before we arrived, something about the assignment felt wrong. The official maps showed one thing. Satellite images showed another. Entire sections of land existed in one version, but vanished in the other. Rivers changed direction. Hills appeared and disappeared. One valley repeated itself twice on 2 different scans taken the same week. At first we blamed bad imaging, then corrupted files, then government data errors. But deep down, all of us felt the same thing. The forest didn't want to stay measured. There were 5 of us total. Me, Darren, the team leader, Mila, our GPS specialist, Jonah, who handled terrain modeling, and Eric, quiet guy, former military, barely spoke unless necessary. We entered the forest just after sunrise. The trees were taller than anything I'd seen before. Not wide, tall, like they were stretching away from the ground itself. Even the air felt layered. Cold near the dirt, warm higher up, like 2 different places stacked together. At first, everything seemed normal. Birds overhead, equipment working, GPS signals stable. But after the first hour, the silence started changing. Not disappearing, organizing. That's the only way I can explain it. The forest sounded selective, like it allowed certain noises and swallowed others. Our footsteps stayed loud, but conversations felt softer than they should have. Sometimes Darren would say something right beside me, and it sounded 20 feet away. Then suddenly, normal again. Nobody mentioned it at first, because once one person admits something feels wrong, everyone starts noticing more. And nobody wanted that. Around noon, Mila stopped walking. She stared at her GPS screen silently. "What?" Darren asked. She frowned. "We crossed this hill already." Jonah laughed lightly. "No, we didn't." She turned the screen toward us. The route trail behind us had looped strangely. Not in a circle, in layers, like our path kept folding over itself without us realizing. Darren sighed. Signal drift. But he didn't sound convinced. Mila looked back at the trees, then quietly said, "The map updated while we were moving." Nobody answered her, because we all saw it happen next. The terrain line near our location shifted slightly on screen. A ridge appeared where flat land had been seconds before. Eric stepped closer immediately. "Did you touch anything?" "No." The ridge moved again, slowly, like something breathing beneath paper. Jonah forced a laugh. Okay, that's not funny. But nobody was joking. I remember looking up after that. The trees suddenly felt closer together. Not physically, emotionally, like the forest had started paying attention to us. We kept moving anyway. That's the thing about jobs like this. You continue because stopping makes fear real. Around 2 in the afternoon, we reached a clearing that didn't exist on any map. Perfect circle. No trees inside it. No grass either. Just pale dirt packed flat like old concrete. Eric crouched immediately, touched the ground, then looked up slowly. No roots. What? I asked. Under this soil, he said quietly, there are no roots. That didn't make sense. In a forest this dense, roots should have been everywhere. But the clearing felt dead underneath, like the trees avoided it on purpose. Mila checked her GPS again. Her face changed instantly. We're gone. Darren frowned. What does that mean? She turned the screen around slowly. Our location marker had vanished completely. No error message. No blinking signal. Just empty map. Jonah whispered, that's impossible. Then Eric said something that made my stomach tight. Listen. We all stopped. At first I heard nothing unusual. Then I realized what he meant. No insects. No leaves moving. No birds. The forest had gone completely silent. Not natural silence. Intentional silence. Like something had paused the environment. Then came the sound. Very faint. Metal hitting metal. Far away. Clang. 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 Slow rhythm. Like someone driving stakes into the ground deep in the woods. Darren stood straighter. There shouldn't be anyone else out here. But the sound continued. Measured. Patient. Mila whispered, it sounds close. But it didn't. That was the problem. It sounded far and near at the same time. Like distance wasn't behaving correctly anymore. Eric looked toward the trees, then quietly said, we need to leave. Nobody argued with him. Not even Darren. We turned back immediately. But within 15 minutes, Jonah stopped suddenly. We passed this already. The clearing. Again. Same pale dirt. Same dead silence. Same missing roots. Darren cursed under his breath. No, we walked north. Mila checked the compass. Then checked again. It says south now. Eric grabbed the device from her. Looked at it. Then slowly lowered it. The needle was spinning. Not fast. Lazy circles. Like it couldn't decide where north belonged anymore. The metal clanging sound returned. Closer this time. Clang. 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 Jonah turned sharply toward it. You hear that right. Nobody answered. Because now something worse had appeared. Footprints. Fresh. Crossing the clearing. Boot prints. Human. But wrong somehow. The spacing between them was uneven. One step normal. Next too long. Like whoever made them kept changing size while walking. Eric's face hardened immediately. Don't follow those. But Darren already was. Not physically. Mentally. I saw it in his eyes. Focus. Curiosity. Pull. He whispered, someone been here. Then another sound came from the trees. Not metal this time. A voice. Faint. Too faint to understand fully. But unmistakably human. Mila grabbed my arm instantly. Did someone say help? I listened carefully. There it was again. Broken words between the trees. Not loud. Weak. Like someone exhausted. Darren moved toward the sound immediately. Hey, he shouted. No response. Then, the voice again. Closer now. Over here. Jonah looked relieved instantly. Oh, thank God. But Eric didn't move. He stared into the trees with this horrible expression I still remember. Not fear. Recognition. Like he'd heard something familiar. The voice came again. Please. Darren stepped toward the forest edge. Eric grabbed his shoulder hard. Don't. Darren pulled away instantly. What's your problem? Eric stared at him, then quietly asked, Did that voice sound familiar to you? Nobody answered. Because yes, it did. Not clearly, not enough to identify, but enough to feel known. That was the trap. The forest wasn't imitating voices perfectly. It was imitating emotion, the feeling of hearing someone you trust. The clanging sound stopped suddenly. Complete silence replaced it. And then Mila looked down at her GPS one more time. Her face drained completely. What? I asked. She slowly turned the screen toward us. A new line had appeared on the map. Handwritten, not digital, as if written directly onto the display itself. 5 words. You are inside now. And somewhere deep beyond the trees, something answered our breathing with its own. The 5th voice laughed before any of us spoke. That's what I remember most clearly. Not loud, not evil, just quiet amusement crackling through the radio static like someone enjoying a private joke. We all heard it at the same time, and we all froze for the exact same reason. Because there were only 4 of us left. Eric had vanished sometime after sunset. No scream, no footsteps, nothing dramatic. One moment, he was walking behind us through the trees. The next moment, Jonah asked a question, and nobody answered from the back. We turned around. Empty forest. No Eric. At first, Darren thought he wandered off. Then Mila found his radio, hanging from a branch at eye level. Still switched on. Still humming softly with static. That's when panic finally entered the group. Not fear. Not unease. Panic. Real panic changes people fast. Jonah started talking too much. Darren became angry at everything. Mila went silent completely. And I kept having this horrible feeling that the forest wasn't hiding people from us anymore. It was removing them carefully, like pulling threads from fabric. Night came faster than it should have. The sky darkened in strange layers between the trees. Not natural sunset colors, just gray swallowing gray. We made camp beside a narrow ridge because Darren refused to keep moving in darkness. Nobody argued, mostly because we were exhausted, but also because the woods no longer felt stable after dark. The trees seemed taller at night, closer together, like they moved slightly whenever we looked away. We sat around a weak lantern without speaking much. Every few minutes someone would glance toward the forest expecting Eric to walk back out. But he never did. Around midnight, Darren decided to do a radio check, mostly to calm himself down. He grabbed the comm unit and pressed the button. This is Darren, radio check. Static answered first. Then Mila quietly replied from her tent. Copy. I answered next. Then Jonah. 4 voices. Normal. For a second, everything felt manageable again. Then the radio crackled one more time. A fifth voice answered. Copy. Silence swallowed the camp instantly. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Because the voice sounded calm. Too calm. Like it didn't understand why we stopped talking. Darren slowly lowered the radio. His face had gone pale. Jonah whispered, "Who was that?" Nobody answered. The static returned softly. Then, click. The channel opened again by itself. Did I miss check-in? That voice again. Male. Quiet. Familiar somehow. But not recognizable enough to place. Darren grabbed the radio tighter. Who is this? A pause. Then soft static. And finally, you already counted me. Every hair on my arm stood up instantly. Jonah shook his head fast. No. Mila stepped closer to the lantern. Like light could help somehow. Darren pressed the button harder this time. Identify yourself. The voice responded immediately. Eric. My stomach dropped. Because it sounded almost right. Almost like someone copying him from memory instead of hearing him naturally. Too careful. Too smooth. The real Eric always sounded tired when he talked. This voice didn't. It sounded practiced. Jonah whispered, "That's not him." But the radio crackled again before Darren could answer. Then why did you leave me behind? Silence. Complete. Darren stared at the comm unit like it might bite him. I didn't leave anyone behind, he said quietly. The voice laughed again. Soft. Patient. You counted 4 too quickly. Mila backed away instantly. I don't like this. Neither did I. Because something about the voice felt wrong beyond imitation. It wasn't trying to scare us. It sounded confused. Like it genuinely believed it belonged with us. Darren switched the radio off immediately. The silence after that felt enormous. Nobody spoke for almost a full minute. Then Jonah whispered, "We should leave right now." And go where? Darren snapped. Jonah looked toward the trees helplessly. I don't know anywhere else. But deep down, we all understood the truth already. There was no somewhere else anymore. The forest had stopped being a location hours ago. Now it felt like a system. And we were inside it. The lantern flickered suddenly. Just once. But during that single blink of darkness, I heard breathing nearby. Not from our group. Closer. Slow. Interested. Then the light returned. Nothing there. But Mila noticed my face immediately. You heard it too. I nodded slowly. Nobody asked what we meant. Because they already knew. Darren stood up abruptly. I'm checking the perimeter. Jonah grabbed his arm instantly. Don't. Darren pulled away. I'm not sitting here waiting for whatever this is. He grabbed a flashlight and walked toward the trees. The beam disappeared between trunks almost immediately. Mila whispered he shouldn't go alone. But none of us followed him. And I think that was the moment something inside our group broke permanently. Fear changes loyalty first. A few minutes later, the radio crackled again. Still powered off. I swear it was off. But static hissed from the speaker anyway. Then Darren's voice came through. Calm. Too calm. I found Eric. Jonah stood instantly. Where? No answer. Only static. Then Darren again. He's okay. Mila grabbed the radio slowly. Darren, where are you? A pause. Then, closer than before. The lantern dimmed slightly. Not enough to go out. just enough to notice. Jonah whispered, "That's not Darren." And then the worst part happened. Another voice answered through the radio. "Also Darren. Same tone. Same breathing. Same everything." "No," the second voice said softly. "This one is." The radio hissed violently. Two identical versions of Darren breathing through static at the same time. My chest tightened so hard it hurt. Mila stepped backward. Jonah looked ready to run. Then both voices spoke together. Perfectly synced. "Why are there only 4 tents?" The silence afterward felt alive. I slowly turned my head toward the campsite and counted. 1, 2, 3, 4. My blood went cold. There should have been 5. Eric's tent was gone. Not collapsed. Not removed. Gone. No marks in the dirt. No equipment. Nothing. Like it had never existed. Jonah whispered, "No." He started shaking hard. It was right there. Mila stared at the empty ground with tears forming in her eyes. I remember it. But memory suddenly felt dangerous here. Like remembering something the forest rejected could make you disappear too. The radio clicked again. One final transmission. "Quiet. Patient. You keep counting wrong." Then silence returned. Real silence this time. No static. No breathing. Nothing. Darren still hadn't returned. And somewhere beyond the trees, something moved slowly around the edge of our camp, counting us again. The coordinates changed while I was looking directly at them. Not drifting. Not glitching. Changing. 1 second the GPS showed our camp 2 miles south. Then the numbers blinked once, and suddenly we were 7 miles east. I stared at the screen so long my eyes started watering. The map underneath stayed exactly the same. Only the coordinates moved. Like the forest had quietly picked us up and placed us somewhere else without touching anything around us. Jonah noticed my face immediately. "What?" I turned the device toward him slowly. His expression drained the second he saw it. "That's impossible." I wanted to agree, but impossible things had stopped feeling impossible out here. After the radio incident, none of us slept. Darren never came back. At sunrise, the forest looked normal again. That was somehow worse. The trees stood still. Birds chirped softly. Cold mist drifted through the branches like nothing strange had happened. But the silence underneath those sounds remained. Heavy. Watching. Mila packed her gear first. "We leave now," she said. Nobody argued this time. The group had changed overnight. There were only 3 of us now. At least I thought there were 3. That thought alone made my stomach tighten. We started hiking west because, according to the map, the ranger station should have been less than 8 miles away. Easy terrain. Mostly downhill. Darren had the main compass before he disappeared, but we still had 2 backup GPS units and paper maps. Enough to get out. At least that's what I kept telling myself. The forest disagreed quietly. At first, nothing felt wrong. We walked through damp pine needles, while morning light filtered between branches. Jonah kept checking behind us every few minutes. Mila barely spoke, and I couldn't stop hearing that 5th voice in my head. "You keep counting wrong." Around noon, we reached a narrow creek. I recognized it immediately. A fallen log crossed the water near a cluster of moss-covered rocks. The problem was, we had already crossed that creek earlier that morning. I stopped walking. Jonah looked at me. "What?" "We've been here." "No, we haven't." I pointed toward the fallen log. The crack near the middle, I remember it. Jonah stared harder. Then his face changed slowly, because tied around a nearby branch was a strip of orange survey ribbon. Our ribbon. Mila stepped closer to it silently. She touched the knot with shaking fingers. I tied this 3 hours ago. Nobody spoke after that. The forest around us suddenly felt much larger. Not endless, circular, like we were trapped inside something folding inward. Jonah grabbed the GPS unit quickly. Maybe we turned around. But his voice sounded weak now. He already knew better. The device loaded slowly, then froze. The screen flickered once. Coordinates changed again. This time so fast I almost missed it. Numbers rolling upward like a slot machine. Latitude changing. Longitude spinning. Then stopping suddenly. Jonah frowned. That's not possible. What does it say? He swallowed hard. It says we're north of camp. Mila stared at him. That's impossible. We walked west all morning. I know. But even as he said it, the GPS blinked again. Now we were east. Then south. Then nowhere at all. The map screen turned blank for 2 full seconds. A thin gray line appeared across the display. And for a moment, I swear I saw another marker moving near ours. Not an animal icon. Not terrain. A 4th signal. Walking beside us. Then the screen reset completely. Jonah nearly dropped the device. Did you see that? Neither of us answered. Because yes, we did. The forest grew quieter as the day stretched on. Not normal quiet. Controlled quiet. Like sounds were being removed carefully one by one. No birds. No insects. Even our footsteps started sounding strange. Muted. Like the ground was softer than dirt should be. Mila suddenly stopped walking. There's something wrong with the trees. Jonah looked annoyed instantly. What now? She pointed ahead. At first, I didn't understand. Then I saw it. The markings. White paint stripes. We had passed those trees earlier too. But the paint had moved. Not the trees themselves. The marks. Earlier the stripes faced the creek trail. Now they faced us directly. Like signposts turning to watch. Jonah laughed nervously. Okay, nope, I'm done with this place. He started walking faster downhill. Too fast. The kind of speed people use when they're trying not to panic. Mila and I followed. The woods thickened around us slowly. Branches crowded overhead. Light faded beneath the canopy. The air smelled wet and old. And every so often, I noticed small things slightly out of place. A rock where there hadn't been one. A tree bent the wrong direction. Footprints appearing briefly beside ours, then disappearing again. At some point, Jonah stopped speaking entirely. His breathing became louder instead. Vast, uneven. He kept checking the GPS every few minutes like addiction. Every time the coordinates changed again. Once, the device displayed a location in the middle of the ocean. Another time, it placed us directly over the ranger station, though we were still deep in forest. Then came the worst one. The screen suddenly showed 4 active trackers, 4 blinking dots moving together. My chest tightened instantly. Jonah stared silently. Mila whispered, no. 3 of the dots were labeled correctly. Jonah, Mila, Adam, mine. Then there was the 4th. No name. Just a blinking signal walking slightly behind us, matching our pace perfectly. Jonah spun around fast. Nothing there. Only trees. But the tracker kept moving. Slowly. Patiently. Keeping distance. I grabbed the radio from my bag. Static hissed softly. Then a voice whispered through it. Not clear enough to recognize. Just one sentence. Almost home. The signal died immediately after. Jonah snapped. He threw the GPS against a tree, so hard the screen cracked. I'm sick of this. His voice echoed farther than it should have. Too far. The forest carried the sound strangely, like repeating it to itself. Mila looked terrified. Keep your voice down. Why? Her answer came quietly. Because it listens. Silence followed that. Heavy silence. The kind where nobody wants to admit they agree. We kept walking until evening. Or what felt like evening. The sky above the trees stayed the same dull gray all day. No sun movement. No shadows shifting. Just endless dim light. Then suddenly, we found the campsite again. Our own campsite. The same lantern still hanging from a branch. The same boot prints in the dirt. The same missing fourth tent. Jonah stared at it in horror. No. Mila backed away immediately. We walked in a straight line. I know. That's impossible. I know. His scream shattered through the trees violently. And this time, the forest answered. Not loudly. Not with words. But with movement. Far away between the trunks, shapes shifted. Dark figures moving silently through the woods. Too tall. Too thin. Watching us. Jonah saw them too. His anger disappeared instantly. The shapes never came closer. They just stood there between the trees. Barely visible. Like people trying not to be noticed. Then one of them tilted its head slowly. Exactly like Jonah. My blood turned cold. Because the silhouette matched his body shape perfectly. Another shape stood farther left. Smaller. Still. Mila's shape. And another behind me. Mine. 3 copies. Watching us from deep in the forest. Jonah whispered, "What are those?" Nobody answered. Because deep down, we already knew. The GPS in my pocket suddenly turned back on by itself. Cracked screen glowing faintly. A new message appeared across the display. Not lost. REPLACED. Then the coordinates vanished completely. All 4 signals merged into one blinking dot. And somewhere nearby in the trees, something wearing our movements started walking closer. Jonah smiled at me before I realized he was back. That was the first thing that felt wrong. Not the fact that he had disappeared. Not the fact that he suddenly stepped out from the trees near sunrise after being gone for hours. It was the smile. Too calm. Too relaxed. Like he had just returned from a short walk, instead of vanishing into a forest that was slowly breaking our minds apart. Mila saw him first. She stood up so quickly, the lantern tipped sideways in the dirt. Jonah. He stopped near the edge of camp. Morning fog drifted around his legs. His jacket looked damp. His hair hung across his forehead in wet strands. But his face looked peaceful. That scared me more than if he had come back injured. Jonah looked at both of us slowly. Then he said something that made my stomach tight. Why do you both look scared? Both. Not both of us. Both. Like he was counting differently. Mila rushed toward him instantly. Oh my God, where were you? Jonah frowned slightly. Setting markers near the ridge. That was yesterday, I said quietly. His expression changed for half a second. Confusion. Then it disappeared. No, he said. That was this morning. The forest around us stayed perfectly silent. Even the wind had stopped. Mila grabbed his arm tightly. You vanished. Jonah looked down at her hand, like he didn't understand why she was touching him. Then he smiled again. Small. Careful. I'm here now. Something cold moved through my chest. Because Jonah used to talk constantly, even under stress. Now every word sounded measured. Chosen. Like he was learning how to sound human by listening first. Mila didn't notice. Or maybe she didn't want to. Fear makes people accept bad explanations sometimes, especially when the alternative is worse. Jonah sat near the lantern while Mila handed him water. He drank slowly without taking his eyes off me. Not hostile, just studying. Then he asked the question quietly. Where's Darren? I stared at him. You don't remember. His eyes narrowed slightly. Remember what? I waited for something in his expression to crack. Nothing did. He genuinely looked confused, or very good at pretending. Mila finally spoke. He went looking for you last night. Jonah blinked slowly. Why would he do that? No emotion. No guilt. No surprise. Just curiosity. The kind someone might use asking about weather. I looked toward the trees automatically. And that's when I noticed something worse. Fresh footprints surrounded camp. 3 different sets. Mine, Mila's, and Jonah. No 4th set. No sign Darren had ever returned. No evidence he had even existed. The same thing that happened to Eric was happening again. The forest was editing people out slowly. And somehow Jonah didn't notice. Or refused to. A soft crack echoed from the woods nearby. All 3 of us looked up instantly. Then Jonah and Mila spoke together. Exactly together. Probably just coincidence. Except the words matched perfectly. Probably an animal. Same tone. Same timing. My blood went cold. They looked at each other afterward with awkward confusion. Like neither understood why they had spoken at once. Mila laughed nervously. That was weird. Jonah smiled faintly. Yeah. But something in their expressions lingered too long after that. Recognition. Not between each other. Between something deeper underneath. We left camp an hour later. Or tried to. The GPS still refused to stabilize. Coordinates drifted constantly. The maps no longer matched terrain around us. Entire hills appeared where flat ground should have been. Trails bent in impossible directions. At one point, we found our own footprints ahead of us in mud. Fresh, leading the same direction we were already walking. Jonah didn't react much. That bothered me too. Earlier he would have panicked. Now he simply observed things quietly. Like he expected the impossible. Around midday, we reached a clearing covered in pale stones. I stopped immediately. I knew this place. Not from memory. From a dream. A dream I'd had 2 nights ago. The same crooked tree near the center. The same broken stump. The same circle of white rocks half buried in dirt. Mila whispered softly, "We've been here before." Jonah answered instantly, "No, we haven't." They both froze afterward, because neither had spoken loudly. Yet somehow their voices overlapped again. Perfect sync. Mila stepped away from him slowly. Jonah looked disturbed now too. Okay, that was weird. Nobody disagreed. We crossed the clearing carefully. The farther we walked, the stranger the forest became. Trees appeared scarred with symbols. Old survey markers hung upside down from branches. And every so often, I caught Jonah staring into the woods like someone was talking to him quietly. Once I asked what he was looking at. He answered too fast. Nothing. But his eyes stayed fixed between the trees long after. By evening, we found another campsite. Not ours. Older. Rotting. A collapsed tent sat near a dead fire pit. Rust-covered cooking gear lay scattered nearby. And hanging from a branch overhead, a compass spun slowly in circles without stopping. Mila approached carefully. There was another survey team here. I crouched beside the fire pit. Cold ash. Very old, but not abandoned naturally. Everything looked left behind in a hurry. Then Jonah spoke quietly behind me. They tried leaving too. I turned toward him sharply. How do you know that? He paused. For the first time all day, uncertainty crossed his face. He frowned hard. I don't know. The wind moved suddenly through the trees. Soft whispers traveled inside it. Not words exactly. More like distant conversation underwater. Mila heard it too. I saw her shoulders tense instantly. Then Jonah answered the whispers quietly, without realizing it. Not yet. My stomach dropped. Jonah. He looked up slowly. What? You just said something. No, I didn't. You did. Mila backed away from him slightly. Jonah looked genuinely shaken now, but only for a second. Then calmness returned again. Too quickly, like another emotion covered it up. Night arrived fast after that. We stayed at the abandoned campsite because nobody wanted to keep moving in darkness anymore. I volunteered first watch, mostly because I didn't trust sleep. Not here. Not anymore. Mila fell asleep near the dead fire pit. Jonah sat across from me silently for a long time. The lantern light flickered across his face. Something about him felt subtly unfinished now. Not physically, emotionally, like parts of his reactions were missing. Finally he spoke. You think I'm different? It wasn't a question. I stayed quiet. Jonah stared into the trees. I think so too. That surprised me. He rubbed his hands together slowly. There are gaps. What kind of gaps? He frowned. Memories. A long pause. I remember my childhood, college, work, he swallowed. But yesterday feels wrong. How? His eyes drifted toward the forest again, like somebody copied it from someone else. A chill crawled through me. Then Jonah whispered something that nearly stopped my heart. I keep remembering places I've never been. The whispers in the woods grew slightly louder. Mila stirred in her sleep nearby. Jonah tilted his head suddenly, listening. Then he smiled faintly again. That same awful calm smile. They're close tonight. I stood up immediately. Who? His expression shifted. Confusion again. I don't know. The lantern flickered hard. Darkness swallowed camp for 1 second. Maybe less. But during that moment, I heard breathing directly beside me. Not Jonah's. Not Mila's. Several people breathing together softly in the dark. Then the light returned, and Jonah was staring behind me. Eyes wide now. Real fear finally showing. I turned slowly. At the edge of camp stood 3 figures between the trees. Tall, still, watching. One looked exactly like Mila. One looked exactly like Jonah. And the third one looked exactly like me. None of them moved. None of them blinked. Then beside me, Jonah whispered softly in perfect sync with the copy standing in the trees. "You shouldn't have come back." My uncle's cabin smelled like wet wood, old paper, and something faintly metallic. Not blood. Not exactly. Just old pennies left in rain. I noticed that smell before I noticed the silence. The silence came second. Heavy, strained, the kind that made my own breathing sound rude. I stood in the doorway holding the rusted key the lawyer had mailed me 3 weeks earlier. Property transfer, estate settlement, final belongings. Cold legal words for a man who used to send me postcards filled with terrible jokes and badly drawn bears. Uncle Martin had lived alone near Black Hollow Forest for almost 20 years. Then one winter morning, a mail carrier found him dead beside the wood stove. Heart failure, natural causes, simple ending. That's what everyone said. But simple endings don't usually leave behind 7 locked journals wrapped in chain inside a basement storage trunk. I didn't know about the journals yet. At that moment, I was just trying to convince myself to step inside. The cabin looked smaller than I remembered from childhood. Crooked porch, dark windows, pine trees pressing close around the property like curious strangers. The forest sat just beyond the backyard. Too close. Close enough that shadows from the trees touched the cabin walls before sunset. I carried my bags inside. Dust floated through thin afternoon light. Everything remained exactly as Martin left it. Coffee mug near the sink. Reading glasses beside an armchair. Blanket folded carefully over the couch. That disturbed me more than mess would have. The place didn't feel abandoned. It felt paused, like someone had stepped outside briefly and might return any second. I tried opening windows. Most were stuck. The air inside barely moved. That metallic smell lingered quietly underneath everything. By evening, rain started falling softly against the roof. I heated canned soup, unpacked half my things, told myself I would stay 2 nights. 3 maximum. Sell the cabin, handle paperwork, leave. Easy, simple. I almost believed it, until I found the note taped beneath the kitchen table. I only noticed it because my phone slipped from my lap during dinner. The paper had yellowed with age. One sentence written in Martin's messy handwriting. Do not answer if it uses your real name. I stared at the note for a long time. At first I laughed softly, because Martin loved weird jokes. Conspiracy books, ghost stories, fake treasure maps hidden inside birthday cards. This felt like him. Mostly. Except his handwriting looked rushed, pressed deep into the paper. Not playful. Afraid. Rain tapped harder against the windows. The cabin seemed darker suddenly. I folded the note carefully, told myself not to overthink it. Then I heard someone whisper my name outside. Very softly. Elena. My spoon slipped from my hand. Silence followed immediately. I stayed frozen, listening. Rain. Wind. Nothing else. My chest tightened slowly. I told myself it came from outside. A sound trick. Branches scraping. Human brains are good at finding patterns where none exist, especially in unfamiliar places. I knew that. I repeated that. Still, I checked the windows anyway. No car lights. No neighbors. No movement near the tree line. Just rain falling through dark woods. I slept badly that night. dreamed about the forest standing closer to the cabin than before. Tree trunks pressed against windows, branches tapping softly against the glass. Not trying to get in, trying to get attention. I woke around 3:14 a.m. Complete darkness, cold room, and the distinct feeling someone had spoken moments earlier. My heart was already racing before I fully opened my eyes. I listened. Nothing. Then I heard it. Floorboards creaking downstairs. Slow. Careful. One step. Pause. Another step. Every muscle in my body locked. I grabbed my phone immediately. No signal. Perfect. Of course. The creaking stopped. Silence returned. I sat there for almost 10 minutes listening to rain hit the roof. Finally, I convinced myself. Old cabin. Temperature changes. Wood expands. Settles. Normal. I almost relaxed. Then a voice whispered softly beneath my bedroom window. Lena. I stopped breathing. Nobody calls me that. Nobody. Not anymore. My mother used to. When I was little. Before she died. I hadn't heard that nickname spoken out loud in almost 15 years. Cold moved slowly through my chest. Because Martin didn't use it. My friends didn't know it. My coworkers definitely didn't know it. I stayed perfectly still. The rain kept falling. The voice didn't return. But I didn't sleep again. Morning light felt like survival. I made coffee with shaking hands and searched the cabin for distractions. That's when I found the basement trunk. Locked, heavy, hidden beneath old blankets and broken fishing gear. The key sat inside Martin's desk drawer upstairs, like he expected someone to open it eventually. The lock snapped open with a dull click. Inside, 7 journals, wrapped carefully in chain. Not locked, wrapped, like containment mattered more than security. My hands felt cold suddenly. The first journal looked old. Dark leather cover. Water damage along the edges. I opened to a random page. Martin's handwriting filled every inch. September 8. Heard it again near the West Trail. Used my childhood name this time. The one my brother invented. No one living knows that name. I read that sentence 3 times. My stomach tightened slowly. Childhood name. Private nickname. The same thing that happened last night. I turned pages faster. Entry after entry. Dates spanning years. Descriptions growing worse. The voice changes each week. Different tones. Different people. Always knows the hidden names. Never answer. Never follow. I stopped reading. The cabin suddenly felt smaller. The rain outside had stopped. Silence filled the rooms again. Too much silence. I stood slowly and checked the front door. Still locked. Windows secure. Empty property. Normal. Everything normal. Then I noticed something sticking from inside the 3rd journal. A folded photograph. Old Polaroid. 3 people standing beside the cabin. Martin. A woman I didn't recognize. And me. Small. Maybe 8 years old. I frowned. I didn't remember this picture being taken. Actually, I didn't remember being at this cabin with that woman at all. I turned the photo over slowly. Writing on the back. Summer after the VOICES started using her name. My mouth went dry. Sorry. Me. No. That didn't make sense. I would remember something like that. Wouldn't I? The front door rattled softly. Just once. I looked up instantly. Nobody there. The doorknob moved again. Tiny movement. Barely noticeable. My pulse slammed hard against my throat. I approached slowly, carefully. The window beside the door showed the empty porch. No person. No animal. Nothing. Then, very quietly, from somewhere beyond the trees, a woman's voice whispered my childhood nickname again. Lena. Soft. Patient. Familiar. My mother's voice. Exactly my mother's voice. Every memory inside me tightened at once. Not similar. Not close. Exact. Tears hit my eyes before I could stop them. And that scared me more than the voice itself. Because some part of me, some stupid aching part, wanted to open the door, wanted to step outside, wanted to hear it again. My hand actually touched the lock before I realized what I was doing. Then I remembered the note under the kitchen table. Do not answer if it uses your real name. The forest stood beyond the yard, still, waiting, and from somewhere deep between the trees, my mother's voice spoke one more time. Closer now. Elena, you forgot what happened here. The first whisper came from the bathroom mirror at 2:13 in the morning. I know the exact time because I had been lying awake for hours, staring at the ceiling of my uncle's cabin while rain tapped softly against the roof. The power had gone out around midnight. After that, the whole place felt hollow, too quiet, like the cabin was holding its breath. At first, I thought the whisper came from outside. Then I heard my name again. Not Mara. The other one. The name nobody used anymore. The name my mother used when I was little. Mimi. I sat up so fast the old mattress creaked under me. My chest tightened. Only my mother ever called me that. Not friends, not family. Nobody after she died. The whisper came again. Soft, patient. Mimi. The voice sounded close this time. Inside the cabin. I grabbed my flashlight from the bedside table and clicked it on. The weak beam shook in my hand as I scanned the bedroom walls. Old wood panels, dust floating in the air, my uncle's faded fishing hat hanging beside the closet. Nothing moved. But then I heard water dripping. Slow, rhythmic, from the bathroom. I told myself it was just old pipes, just stress. I had only arrived at the cabin 2 days ago, and already the place was getting inside my head. Still, I got up. The floor groaned softly under my feet as I walked toward the bathroom door. The cabin smelled damp tonight. Wet wood, cold air, something earthy underneath it all. The bathroom light didn't work, so I pushed the door open with the flashlight aimed ahead of me. The sink faucet was dripping. Tick, 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 and the mirror above it. God, for 1 second, I thought somebody was standing behind me. I spun around so fast my shoulder slammed into the doorframe. Nobody there. When I looked back at the mirror, I realized what scared me. My reflection looked delayed, only slightly, like it had moved half a second too late. I stared at it. It stared back. My own pale face, dark circles under my eyes, messy hair falling around my shoulders. Then the whisper came again. Not behind me. Not outside. Inside the mirror. Mimi. My stomach dropped so hard it hurt. I backed away from the sink. The reflection didn't. For 1 terrible second, it stayed standing there while I moved backward. Then it caught up, exactly matching me again. I ran out of the bathroom and slammed the door shut. The whisper stopped immediately. Silence filled the cabin again. But now the silence felt worse, because I knew I hadn't imagined it. I barely slept after that. Every time I closed my eyes, I pictured my reflection standing still while I moved away. By morning, I convinced myself exhaustion had caused it. The drive up to the cabin had taken almost 10 hours. Then there was the stress of sorting through my uncle's belongings after his death, the isolation, the rain. My brain was playing tricks on me. That explanation lasted until I found the new sentence in my uncle's journal. I had spent most of the next day reading through his notebooks at the kitchen table. There were dozens stacked inside an old wooden trunk beside the fireplace. Most were filled with scattered notes about the forest. Dates, weather patterns, names, always names. Some entries were normal. Others felt wrong. April 12, heard it again near the creek, female voice this time. June 3, they only use names people trust. August 19, mirrors are worse after midnight. That last line made my hands go cold. I opened the journal wider. There was another sentence underneath. One I swear had not been there the night before. If it learns her childhood name, keep her away from the mirrors. I stopped breathing for a second. The handwriting matched my uncle, exactly. But the ink looked fresh, still wet in places. I touched it carefully with my finger. Black ink smeared across my skin. A sound came from the hallway behind me. A soft creak, like somebody leaning their weight against the floorboards. I turned slowly. The hallway was empty, but at the very end of it, the bathroom door was open. I knew I had shut it before going to sleep. The sink faucet was dripping again. Tick, tick, tick. I tried calling someone after that. Anyone. But the cabin had almost no signal. One bar if I stood near the front porch. Even then, calls dropped after a few seconds. I managed to reach my friend Lena long enough to tell her the place was getting creepy. She laughed at first. You've been watching horror videos again. I'm serious, I said quietly. The forest around the cabin moved gently in the wind, while I stood outside with my phone pressed to my ear. Tall pine trees, dark shadows between them. The woods stretched forever. No birds, no insects, just wind. Then Lena went silent. Mara, she whispered. My chest tightened. What? There's someone talking. I frowned. What do you mean? In the background, her voice shook slightly now. A woman. Cold spread through my arms. There's nobody here. The line crackled loudly. Then I heard it too. Very faint. Right beside me. Mimi. The call ended. I stood frozen on the porch. The whisper hadn't come through the phone. It came from the trees. I looked toward the forest edge. The branches swayed slowly. Nothing else moved. But deep between the trunks, I thought I saw somebody standing there, watching the cabin. A pale shape, almost hidden. I blinked. Gone. That night, I covered every mirror in the cabin with blankets. Bathroom mirror, bedroom mirror, even the tiny mirror inside the medicine cabinet. I felt stupid doing it, but fear had started settling into me slowly now. Not panic, something worse. Expectation. Like part of me already knew the whispers would come back. I made coffee around midnight to stay awake. Rain hammered softly against the windows again. The fire crackled low in the fireplace. I kept trying to read my uncle's journals, hoping something inside them would explain what was happening. Instead, they only made things worse. One page had names written over and over again. Hundreds of them. Different handwriting. Some scratched so hard they tore the paper. At the bottom of the page, my uncle had written, "It learns you by listening." Another page said, "Do not answer if it speaks from glass." Then around 1:30 in the morning, I heard knocking. 3 soft taps from inside the bathroom. I stared down the hallway. The bathroom door remained slightly open. The blanket covering the mirror underneath had slipped halfway down. Another knock. Tap, tap, tap. I stood slowly. Every part of me wanted to run outside and get in my car. But another part of me needed to know. Needed answers. I walked carefully down the hallway. The air felt colder there. My flashlight beam trembled across the walls. When I reached the bathroom door, the dripping faucet had stopped. Complete silence now. I pushed the door open wider. The blanket had fallen completely off the mirror. My reflection stared back at me immediately. But something was wrong with her face. She looked calmer than I felt, almost relieved. Then she smiled. I didn't. My body locked in place. The reflection tilted her head slightly and whispered without moving her mouth, "You finally came back." The bathroom light suddenly flickered on by itself. For one blinding second, the mirror showed something standing directly behind me. Tall, thin, its face hidden in darkness, its hand resting gently on my shoulder. The lights went out again instantly. I turned around screaming. Nothing there. When I looked back at the mirror, my reflection was normal again. Except for one thing. Written across the fogged glass in dripping black letters were 4 words. "We know your real name." And underneath it, my childhood nickname, written exactly the way my mother used to spell it. I almost burned the tapes without listening to them. That sounds dramatic now, but after what happened in the bathroom mirror, every object inside the cabin started feeling dangerous, like the whole place had been waiting for someone to return. Waiting for me. The cassette tapes were hidden inside a box beneath my uncle's bed. I found them while looking for matches. The box itself was old cedar wood, tied shut with black string. No labels, no dates, just dust thick enough to coat my fingers gray. Inside were 23 cassette tapes. Every single one had a name written on it. Not normal names. Things like the boy who ran, the woman who looked back, the one who answers, the hollow child. I sat on the floor holding one of the tapes while rain rolled softly against the cabin windows. My flashlight rested beside me, casting weak yellow light across the bedroom walls. I should have left them alone. Instead, I found my uncle's old tape recorder in the closet. The batteries were dead, but somehow the machine still turned on the second I pressed play. No static, no warm-up noise, just breathing, slow breathing. I froze immediately. The sound filled the bedroom. Then a man's voice spoke softly. Record begins. Subject entered the forest on October 9th. Male, 42 years old. A long silence followed. Then the voice changed. Not the speaker. Someone else. Very faint. Almost whispering directly into the microphone. He is not called Daniel. Cold spread through my stomach. The first voice continued shakily. Subject's legal name is Daniel Reeves. The whisper answered immediately. No. Another pause. Then, he is called the one who buried his brother. I stared at the tape recorder. The voice sounded wrong. Not distorted. Too clear. Like somebody standing inches from the speaker. The recording continued with heavy breathing. Then the man behind the recorder spoke again. Daniel reported hearing voices near the northern trail. He heard us because he already belonged here. The tape clicked softly. Ended. I sat frozen on the floor. Outside, the trees scraped softly against the cabin walls. The forest suddenly felt much closer than before. I checked the cassette carefully. No date. No explanation. Just those words written in faded marker. The one who buried his brother. I didn't want to play another tape, but fear does something strange after enough time passes. It slowly turns into curiosity. That was the dangerous part. An hour later, I played the second tape. This one started with static. Then my uncle's voice. I recognized it immediately. Calm, tired, older than I remembered. Interview number 14, he said quietly. Subject refuses to share her birth name now. A woman laughed softly somewhere nearby. Not happy laughter. Nervous, like somebody trying not to panic. Then my uncle asked, "What did the forest call you?" Silence. I could hear wind moving through trees in the background. Then the woman whispered. It knew before I did. My skin prickled. My uncle spoke again. "Tell me exactly what happened." The woman inhaled shakily. "I heard my mother calling me near the creek. She died 12 years ago." The tape crackled softly. "She used the name she called me when I was little, a name nobody else knew." My chest tightened hard. The woman kept talking. At first I thought someone was playing a joke, but then her voice broke slightly. Then it started saying other things. My fingers tightened around the recorder. "What things?" my uncle asked. A long silence followed. Then the woman whispered. It called me the woman who stayed. The cabin suddenly felt colder. I listened carefully as she continued. "My husband drowned in the lake 3 years earlier. Everyone thought it was an accident." The tape hissed louder, but part of me always knew I could have saved him. Another pause. The forest knew too. The recording ended with crying. Real crying. Small. Hopeless. I shut the tape recorder off. For a long time, I just sat there staring at the wall. Rainwater slid slowly down the windows beside me. Somewhere deep in the cabin, wood creaked softly. The names on the tapes weren't random. They weren't nicknames. They were confessions. Not spoken ones. Hidden ones. The kind people buried inside themselves. And somehow, the forest knew them already. That thought stayed with me the rest of the night. I walked through the cabin checking locks 3 different times. Every mirror stayed covered now. I couldn't stand looking at my own reflection anymore. Not after what it whispered. Around midnight, the power flickered back briefly. Just enough for one lamp in the living room to blink on. And for me to notice something sitting on the kitchen table. A cassette tape. I stopped breathing. I knew for a fact it hadn't been there before. Slowly I walked closer. The tape looked newer than the others. Cleaner. The label was blank except for 3 handwritten words. For the girl. My mouth went dry instantly. I looked around the cabin. Empty. Silent. But deep down I already knew. The tape wasn't meant for my uncle. It was meant for me. I should have thrown it into the fire. Instead, 20 minutes later, I pressed play. Static crackled softly. Then came the sound of footsteps moving over leaves. Whoever held the recorder was breathing heavily. Then my uncle spoke quietly. "If someone finds this tape, leave the cabin immediately." My chest tightened. "This place doesn't mimic voices," he continued. "That's what I believed at first, but it's worse than that." A sharp burst of static interrupted him. Then another voice whispered underneath his. We remember. I nearly dropped the recorder. My uncle kept talking anyway. The forest identifies people by hidden truths: guilt, fear, regret, shame. It calls people by the names they refuse to say aloud. The tape crackled harder now, as if wind was hitting the microphone. Then I heard distant whispering, dozens of voices together, too faint to understand. My uncle's breathing became shaky. "I made the mistake of listening too long," he whispered. "Once it knows your true name, it begins pulling you closer." The whispers grew louder. I could finally make out words now. Different voices, different ages, repeating names, not real names, descriptions, judgments, confessions. The boy who left her there, the mother who lied, the one who watched. My hands started shaking. Then the tape suddenly went silent, completely silent for almost 10 seconds. And then, a woman's voice spoke directly into the recorder. "Soft, close, Mimi." Every muscle in my body locked instantly. My uncle inhaled sharply on the tape. "She heard that name," he whispered. "It knows her already." I felt sick. The tape continued. "If you're hearing this, Mara, don't answer when it speaks." A sound interrupted him. Footsteps, crunching leaves, coming closer. Then my uncle whispered something that made my blood run cold. "It can enter through reflections, because reflections are versions of you that already belong to it." The whispering returned again, louder this time. So many overlapping voices. Then one rose above the others. Mine, my own voice, speaking softly from the recorder. I remember my real name now. I threw the cassette player across the room. It slammed against the wall. The tape inside kept playing anyway. My voice continued speaking through the cracked speaker. "But you forgot yours." I backed away slowly. The living room lights flickered again. Once, twice, then every covered mirror in the cabin moved at the same time. Not the mirrors themselves, the blankets covering them, like something underneath had pressed gently against the fabric. I couldn't breathe. The tape recorder crackled loudly on the floor. Then dozens of whispers filled the room at once. Not loud. Worse. Soft. Patient. Mimi. 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 I ran into the kitchen and grabbed the fireplace poker. My whole body shook violently now. The blankets over the mirrors slowly bulged outward again, like hands pressing from inside the glass. Then all the whispers stopped instantly. Silence hit the cabin so suddenly my ears rang. And in that silence, I heard one final sound. Not from the recorder, not from the mirrors, from upstairs. A floorboard creaked slowly above me. But I was alone in the cabin. At least, I thought I was. I first heard it in my apartment bathroom 3 days after I left the cabin. Not loudly, not like a scream or a ghost story. Just a soft voice behind me while I brushed my teeth. A name, quiet enough that I almost thought it came from the pipes. I froze with the toothbrush still hanging from my mouth. The bathroom light buzzed overhead, yellow, weak. The mirror was fogged around the edges from the shower I had taken earlier, and for 1 second I honestly believed someone else was standing behind me. But when I turned around, there was nothing there. Only the towel hanging beside the sink. Only the half-open door leading into my dark apartment. My heart calmed down after a minute, barely. I told myself it was stress. That cabin had done something to me. The journals, the tapes, the names. Especially that last recording. The one my uncle never finished. I still had the cassette player sitting in a box near my couch. I hadn't touched it since getting home. I didn't even want to look at it. But the voice in the bathroom, it had sounded almost identical to the voice from the tapes. Old, gentle, patient, like it had known me for a very long time. I didn't sleep much that night. Every little sound inside the apartment felt wrong. The hum of the refrigerator, the elevator moving down the hallway, pipes clicking inside the walls. Around 2 in the morning, I finally drifted off on the couch with the TV running low. Then I woke up suddenly. Not because of noise, because the apartment felt occupied. That's the only way I can explain it. My eyes opened slowly, and for a moment I forgot where I was. The television cast pale blue light across the room. Shadows stretched along the walls, and I could feel someone watching me. I sat up fast. Nothing. The front door was locked. Windows closed. The kitchen empty. But then I noticed something that made my stomach tight. The cassette player box beside the couch was open. I knew I had sealed it shut before bed. I remembered pushing the flaps down hard because I didn't even want to see the tapes anymore. Now one flap hung loose. I stared at it for a long time without moving. The TV whispered quietly behind me. Finally, I leaned forward and opened the box completely. The player was still inside. So were the tapes. Except one. Tape 3. The recording with my uncle's voice. Gone. At first I thought maybe I misplaced it while unpacking. I searched the entire apartment. Kitchen drawers, bathroom shelves, jacket pockets. Nothing. The tape had vanished. And deep down, I already knew I hadn't lost it. Something else had taken it. That thought should have sounded insane. But after the cabin, insanity didn't feel far away anymore. The next morning, I left the apartment just to escape the silence inside it. The city helped at first. Cars, people, coffee shops, normal life. I sat inside a crowded cafe for almost 2 hours just listening to strangers talk, listening to dishes clatter, trying to convince myself the world still made sense. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something in my chest tightened the second I saw the screen. I answered carefully. Hello. Static answered first. Then breathing. Slow. Calm. And then that same voice. The one from the forest. The one from the tapes. It whispered the name again. Not my real name. The other one. The name I somehow recognized without understanding why. Cold spread through my body instantly. Who is this? I asked. No answer. Just soft crackling. Then the voice said something else. You left too early. The line went dead. I couldn't breathe for a second. Around me, people kept drinking coffee, laughing, typing on laptops. Nobody noticed the way my hands shook. I left immediately. Back at my apartment building, I noticed my upstairs neighbor standing near the mailboxes. Mrs. Delaney, old woman, lived alone with her cat. She smiled when she saw me. Then her smile faded slowly. You okay, honey? She asked. I nodded too fast. Yeah, just tired. But she kept staring at me strangely. Finally, she said, I heard you talking last night. My throat tightened. Talking. She nodded slowly. In the hallway, around 3 maybe. That wasn't me. Her expression changed. Not confusion. Recognition. Like she had expected that answer. Well, she said quietly. Whoever it was, they kept saying the same word over and over. The air suddenly felt colder. I didn't ask what word. I already knew. That night, I pushed my dresser in front of the apartment door. I closed every curtain, turned on every light. It still didn't help, because the voice wasn't coming from outside anymore. It was inside the apartment. Soft at first, almost impossible to hear. A whisper beneath the refrigerator hum. A voice beneath the sound of running water. Every time I focused on it, it disappeared. Every time I relaxed, it returned. By midnight, I started hearing footsteps above me. Slow dragging sounds crossing the ceiling. Except Mrs. Delaney lived alone. And I remembered suddenly. She once told me she went to bed before 9 every night. The footsteps continued for almost an hour. Back and forth. Back and forth. Then they stopped directly above my living room. Silence filled the apartment. I looked up slowly and heard the voice again, this time clearer than ever. Not through walls, not through pipes, right beside my ear. You remember now. I spun around so fast I nearly fell. Nobody stood there, but something on the wall caught my eye. Words, thin black letters, written across the paint beside the kitchen doorway. I stared at them in horror, because I knew I hadn't written them, and because the handwriting matched my uncle's journals perfectly. You were given back. My knees nearly buckled. I backed away slowly. The room suddenly felt smaller. Wrong somehow. The lights dimmed for half a second, then came back. And for one terrible moment, I saw movement in the dark reflection of the TV screen. A figure standing behind me. Tall, still, watching. I turned instantly. Nothing there. But when I looked back at the screen, the reflection was closer. That's when I ran. I grabbed my keys and left the apartment without even putting shoes on properly. I spent the rest of the night driving nowhere. Highways, gas stations, empty roads. I kept the radio off the entire time. Because I was terrified, the voice would come through the speakers next. Around dawn, exhaustion finally hit me. I parked near a rest stop beside the woods and closed my eyes for a minute. Big mistake, because I dreamed immediately. I was back at the cabin, standing in the hallway outside my uncle's room. Only this time the cabin wasn't empty. Someone stood at the far end of the hall. A woman, her back facing me, long dark hair hanging down her shoulders. I tried to speak, but no sound came out. Then she slowly turned her head, and I realized the woman was me. Not exactly me. Older somehow. Sadder. Her lips moved softly. Don't let it finish. I woke up gasping. Morning sunlight filled the car. For a second, relief washed over me. Just a dream. Just stress. Then I noticed mud on the passenger seat. Wet footprints. Bare human footprints. Leading from the seat to the back of the car. I stopped breathing. Very slowly, I turned around. The back seat was empty, but the smell hit me instantly. Forest soil, wet bark, rotting leaves. The exact smell from the cabin woods. Something had been inside the car. Maybe still was. I drove home shaking so badly, I nearly hit a curb twice. When I reached my apartment building, police cars were outside. People crowded near the entrance. An ambulance sat with its back doors open. I walked closer slowly. Then I saw them carrying out a body under a white sheet. Mrs. Delaney. One officer stopped me before I could enter. "Do you know her?" he asked. I nodded numbly. "What happened?" The officer hesitated. Then he said something that made my blood turn cold. She called 911 around 4 this morning. Said someone was outside her apartment whispering through the door. I felt dizzy. What did they say? The officer looked uncomfortable. She claimed the voice kept repeating a name. He paused. Not her real name. The world tilted around me. I barely heard the rest. Something about cardiac arrest. No signs of forced entry. No suspect. But I already knew. The forest had followed me home. And worse, I think it had followed me because of that name. That thing it kept calling me. That thing I was slowly beginning to remember. That night, I finally opened my uncle's last journal again. Near the back pages, hidden between loose papers, I found one final sentence written in rushed, shaking handwriting. Not everyone hears the name. Only the ones the forest chooses to keep. Underneath, it was something even worse. A name. Mine. Not the name I was born with. The other one. The true one. And the second I read it, someone whispered softly from the dark corner of my apartment. Finally,